Remember that time you died? Probably not, but our boy Enkrid does, because even after getting skewered through the neck on the battlefield, he just woke right back up. Even with infinite retries, getting strong means getting crushed over and over, sometimes by your own friends. And our stubborn corporal just keeps staring down every defeat until he's blocking swords with his bare hands, leaving even elite enemies utterly baffled by his sudden change in style, only to get absolutely riddled with spears in the middle of a field. And then, when he comes back, our resurrecting swordsman just grins through the blood, because he's finally got the answer. He's even got a black panther at his side, just casually growling from the rooftops, and is swinging his sword like a blender through entire platoons. He rises from the ashes of countless deaths, standing tall as a champion, but to understand how our soldier who won't stay dead went from just a foot soldier to a hero cheered by thousands, we have to go back to the very first death. Soldier of Aspen lunges, but our determined blade, Enkrid, is already wincing, bracing for a mortal blow he can't dodge, frozen like a statue carved in fear, as an enemy sword slices through his neck and he slumps over, bleeding profusely. Our stubborn corporal drops to his knees, utterly defeated, and then Enkrid lies dead on the dusty ground as the battle rages around his body. But instead of oblivion, he finds himself floating in a dark void, where a spectral lantern hangs mysteriously, and a voice echoes, asking him if he really thinks this is the end. A hooded spirit rows a boat towards him, its lantern glowing, and as Enkrid struggles in the darkness, the voice simply says, "Try struggling." Our dying fighter closes his eyes against the encroaching darkness, forced to confront the despair of a wall he cannot cross, his face contorted in a silent scream of frustration. Then suddenly, a ladle clangs against a pan, echoing through a military camp. Enkrid wakes up with a jolt, lying in bed with a hand pressed to his forehead, and his squadmate Rem notes that he woke up immediately today. Our time-looping soldier looks down, his expression heavy with grim realization, as Rem continues dressing, completely oblivious. Then Enkrid notices a small beetle crawling on the ground, which is violently crushed by a passing boot, making him inwardly curse. He stands with his sword, staring intently at the ground, thinking to himself, "This is my 18th time seeing that bug's corpse." As he gazes out at the morning sky from his tent, he wonders, if I see it a few more times, will I be able to end this day? Years earlier, a young Enkrid swings his sword with a fierce shout during training, sparring tirelessly against an opponent in the outdoor training area, who is so impressed that he praises our youthful swordsman, saying if he's already this good, Enkrid would surely become a knight. He always dreamed of being a knight, someone capable of superhuman feats, a warrior who could slay 1,000 and change the tide of battle on their own, an invincible hero to all. His eyes burn with a fierce grin at the thought. He remembers other men laughing, urging each other to leave their village and become knights. But our determined blade often sat alone, feeling dejected, because he had learned his own talent might be nothing special. Still, he trained relentlessly into the night, believing that even without talent, with time and endless effort, he could overcome it all. He trains in the snow, a bright flash of light accompanying his swing, as he thrusts his sword into a beast-like opponent, standing victorious and exhausted over the fallen foe. Covered in blood, he shouts triumphantly, "I'm becoming stronger, I can become a knight." But then he faces a new challenge, a single sword standing against him, and Enkrid looks up, surprised and unsettled, as he strikes during a fast-paced training duel. A young blonde boy, a prodigy of some kind, effortlessly parries our hero's strike, looking down at him with an indifferent, almost bored expression. Enkrid kneels in defeat as the boy stands over him, and our aspiring knight despairs, wondering if his hard work was all in vain. His wide, tear-filled eyes convey his desperate question, asking if there's really no way forward. A shooting star streaks across the dark night sky, reminding him of his wish to become a knight. He takes his sword to a tree, striking it repeatedly in relentless training, spending several times less time eating and sleeping than others, swinging and swinging with endless effort, hoping that one day, his powerful strikes against the tree would be enough. He swings his blade with fierce dedication, breathing heavily, utterly exhausted but still determined, his eyes focused on the task. The tree trunk before him is covered in deep sword marks, a testament to his grit, as he stands ready for another round. Gripping his sword with both hands, muscles tense, he prepares for another swing, driven by a new resolve. Enkrid swings his sword against the tree once more, his face strained as he thinks, "I can at least be an experienced soldier." He screams in agony or intense effort, his mouth wide open in a raw cry, finishing a powerful stroke against the tree. 3 years later, the present day finds Enkrid, now a corporal leading one of the 4 squads in the 4 companies. Realizing this is the best position he could achieve after his endless training, he calls out to Jaxon, who simply replies with a question. Enkrid pauses, considering his words, as Jaxon waits for his command. He watches Jaxon carefully, observing his squad. Rem then steps up to Enkrid, asking if he's trying to push something onto him too. Our looping swordsman maintains a serious expression, while Rem's face shows an impish grin, ready for trouble. Enkrid is now back on the Naurilia versus Aspen battlefield, where the close combat battle has begun again, because he came back to life and started reliving the same day over and over again. He fights furiously, already wounded, his eye wide with desperate focus in the heat of battle, believing that today, for sure, he can break the loop. Enkrid and his squad charge forward, screaming into the chaos, and he thinks, This is my 21st time on this same battlefield. He ducks beneath a spear thrust, the point dangerously close to his head, and sharply tilts his head back to avoid a lethal sword swing. A relentless looper is stuck in another brutal clash on the battlefield, with chaos erupting all around him, and he realizes this is his 33rd attempt at this very fight. Even though he can see the enemy's attack clearly, his armored leg still crumples under the blow, and he's forced to engage in a desperate sword fight once more. Our stubborn corporal clashes blades with the enemy, grimacing in pain as he barely holds on, knowing the enemy is just too fast for him, and collapses forward, bloodied and weary, as the dry ground of the battlefield swallows him whole again. He remembers finding a mysterious circular artifact with a galaxy-like blue pattern lying on the ground, after a long stretch as a mercenary, exhausted under a tree near slain panthers. He explains that it wasn't like he was compelled to help the villagers, but he decided to lend them a hand anyway, and two grateful people clasp hands, offering him what little their poor village could afford. Our time-trapped warrior looks pensive, trying to connect the dots, as he holds the mysterious charm in his gloved hand, while an elderly villager gestures, speaking of its powers. Lying wounded on the ground, the charm near his hand, Enkrid finally wonders, could it be? Because of this? Is this thing making today repeat itself? He suspects it's all for the sake of his ultimate goal of becoming a knight. An armored knight looks down at our fallen soldier, mockingly commenting on his pain, raising their sword to deliver the finishing blow, but Enkrid grits his teeth, firing back, "Mercy, my ass!" glaring at the armored figure from behind his helmet, whose eye glows with a malicious light. As the knight impales him, Enkrid can only think what a pervert gains pleasure from stabbing people. Back in the loop, Enkrid wakes up with a clang, hitting a metal pan with a ladle to wake up his squadmate, making Rem jump from his cot and yell, "Whoa, what the fuck?" before rounding on Enkrid, asking if he has lost his mind, playing tricks right at the start of the day. Our determined death tester just stomps his boot on the wooden floor and looks down at Rem, announcing, "Teach me the heart of the beast." The quick-tempered Rem swings his axe aggressively toward our corporal, but Enkrid's blue eyes widen in intense focus as he narrowly avoids the downward swing and then blocks Rem's axe with his own weapon, surprising his friend. Rem looks back, shocked at Enkrid's sudden resilience, asking him how the skin of his heart suddenly thickened out of nowhere. The burly axe-wielder wonders to himself if his family's secret technique somehow got out. But our corporal, covered in sweat, just looks forward focused. He walks beside Rem, explaining that it's like a sensation he learned from death, and then he holds his sword, ready for another round of sparring. Our determined soldier stands ready for one more bout, while Rem looks down with a calm, slightly amused expression, grinning before he attacks again. Even with the heart of the beast, Enkrid knows he'll just get killed if he can't land a strike, and Rem furiously asks how long he plans to dodge, calling him squad commander, as the axe blade strikes the ground near him. Rem's face is in an extreme close-up during his aggressive swing, while our corporal narrowly dodges, thinking about the only sword technique he possesses right now, making a strained facial expression and focusing all his energy. With gritted teeth, Enkrid exerts himself, pushing off the ground with his boot like a coiled spring to perform what he calls a petty trick. Rem leaps through the air, bringing his axe down in a heavy strike, but Enkrid ducks and moves low to the ground, avoiding the attack. Still, among what he has, this is the most decent technique he possesses, and our focused corporal's face shows intense determination. He focuses intensely, preparing to strike with his sword, lunging forward with a precise thrusting motion, like a striking viper. Rem leaps with his axe, clashing against Enkrid's movement, leaving our exhausted corporal surprised, as he realizes he just imitated that pervert's stab. He clenches his fist in determination, knowing his body remembers the move after dying by it more than 10 times. Rem then speaks to him, demonstrating a combat motion with his hands, and saying that among all Enkrid has shown him, that stab was the most decent one. Our determined corporal clenches his fist with a focused expression, as Rem explains he is too doubtful of himself, and Enkrid's intense blue eye fixates on his words. He considers Rem's advice to go all in, thinking, "I can't dodge that," to ensure he doesn't lose his grip on his sword. Although Rem explained it poorly, our time-trapped warrior understood what he meant. Suddenly, in another loop, an enemy soldier stabs Enkrid in the neck, and he gurgles blood after being stabbed, realizing he didn't have confidence in his sword as the soldier stands over him. The sword tip points downward for mercy, but our dying corporal grips his own sword on the ground as the enemy delivers the finishing blow. Shouting, Enkrid swings his sword in a training drill, knowing he must stab with the intent to kill. He and Rem spar, their blades clashing again, and our determined corporal, wearing a helmet, lets out a fierce yell of frustration in battle. He's engaged in another sword fight, clashing blades with an opponent, blocking a powerful blow from Rem during a training spar, thinking, "No!" But then he's struck down on the battlefield by an Aspen soldier, lying on the ground again, defeated in combat. Gasping with blood in his mouth, he notes this is on the 111th day. His face, shown close up, is ready to fight again on the 123rd day. He engages in intense sword combat against an armored Aspen soldier once more, letting out another shout. And finally, on the 124th day, his face is sweating and determined during the fight. Rem strikes downwards with his large axe during a training session, standing intensely while holding his weapon, as our battle-worn corporal grips his sword handle tightly, looking intensely focused. sword blade swings mid-combat, and Enkrid stares intensely with a drop of sweat on his face. He looks up with a twisted, intense grin, even though Rem notices his hands are worn out and gushing blood, wondering why he's laughing like a madman. A persistent corporal is back on the battlefield for the 21st time, sweating through another intense fight against an enemy soldier who just won't quit. So he grips his sword, ready to deliver a blow, and their blades clash in a shower of bright sparks. But the new move doesn't quite work out, and our looping swordsman collapses, having been fatally struck once again, processing the failure of his latest attempt as his eye widens in resignation. Sword drops to the muddy, bloodied ground, and an enemy soldier kicks his dying body, then looks down, breathing heavily to ask, "You look like you're suffering." The soldier stands over him, sword held high, his visor glinting as he promises a tomorrow where it's all an MY head. Our fallen hero stares intensely at the blade before the enemy laughs, just before driving the sword straight through him, and Enkrid dies for the 21st time. Then that familiar glowing medallion pulses with magical energy. It's light, rhythmic, and bright, as a small dark object, maybe an insect, flies through the air, and a soldier's boot crushes the ground, signaling a fresh start. Our reset hero stands in the barracks, back at the beginning of the day, walking away from a silently staring Rem and other soldiers, who just look at him with confused expressions, as he marches through the camp with a red-haired soldier following close behind, the soldier calling out while others look on, unsure what's up with him. Enkrid's face is a picture of serious determination, wondering, what if I can find a way to escape and survive? He stands in a dark, empty space, sword lowered, acknowledging he's stronger now, but that's not enough. He has to surpass this wall. He knows this because he's repeated this day over and over again, mastering the heart of the beast, and he won't abandon this blessing as he lunges forward, gripping his armored gauntlet tightly, poised with his sword blade, a hardened soldier ready for battle, his focused eyes showing intense concentration. Horns sound across the Naurilia army, signaling the charge for his 22nd attempt, and our determined corporal stands ready with his squadmates, weapons gripped, taking his place in the center of the battlefield with sword and shield drawn. As the armies clash in chaotic melee, Enkrid faces off against an enemy soldier, declaring, a person with no skills, MANAGED to survive this battle because of three things: luck and a cool head. He strikes a blow, fighting alongside his comrades, deflecting an attack with his shield in the heat of battle, remembering that on the 71st day, a soldier cut off his foot, preventing him from doing anything to the stabbing pervert. He strikes another enemy, reasoning that, if I let HIM live, he interrupts MY fight with the stabbing pervert, so letting HIM live is not an option. He has trained in throwing weapons throughout his countless days, so it's not difficult, screaming as he fights, and blocks a downward strike with his shield, anticipating Vel's move. After all that, Vel ends up right behind him, engaging in a close-quarters sword clash, which means it's now time for our veteran to face the wall. His eyes are focused and intense, as he engages an enemy combatant, moving defensively, sword ready as he slides across the field, successfully blocking a strike that sends sparks flying. A corporal clashes swords with his opponent Meteor, who watches with an intense gaze, surprised to see that it looked like he was charging at him, yet instead he blocked it. But the enemy lacks real fighting experience, so the Valen mercenary sword technique with its many variations is effective against him, as Enkrid blocks another incoming strike, sparks flying. He yells aggressively, launching an attack, his eye focused, following through with a decisive sword strike that forcefully impacts the enemy's equipment, maintaining his intense focus. As they lock in mid-combat, the enemy soldier's helmet prepares for another move, but our determined corporal's eye shows his readiness, because he now knows. Our weary corporal gasps in pain, defeated on the ground once more, as a towering enemy warrior looks down, taunting, "I can't believe someone like you defeated HIM." Enkrid heaves, clutching his wounded side, but before the enemy can deliver the final blow with his axe, Rem, Enkrid's axe-wielding squadmate, leaps in to engage the warrior, parrying a strike with a fierce grin, ready for more. Fierce exchange of blows begins, Rem delivering a powerful attack, and when another enemy soldier attempts to strike the fallen Enkrid with a spear, Rem intercepts the attack, saving our injured hero yet again, standing ready for the next move. Rem continues his fierce combat, observing his opponent, recognizing him as one of the frog warrior race born to fight, and wonders why such a formidable opponent is on a trivial battlefield, knowing he must risk his life to win. But even with Rem's bravery, the enemy warrior is formidable, looming over the battlefield, having downed another soldier, and stepping toward Enkrid as Rem pants heavily, focusing on the threat. As an enemy raises his weapon for a strike, delivering a violent blow, Ragna, another squadmate, swings his sword in a desperate arc to intercept, creating a violent collision as he strikes back. Enkrid and his comrades huddle low in the chaotic battlefield, our recuperating corporal's face showing an intense, strained expression, as a soldier calls for a full retreat. Enkrid's eyes close, weary from the battle, as soldiers retreat under a red sunset sky. Then a splash of liquid in a dark blue space signals the reset, and our hero lies dazed on a reflective surface, as an ethereal silhouette stands over him, speaking of the WALLS that will keep appearing in your way. Enkrid kneels, hand clenched, pondering fate. But for him, these walls exist, and he opens his intense blue eyes resolute. He lies in deep thought, his face illuminated by a soft light, realizing he's in the infirmary tent. Rem, a muscular man with a beard, looms over his bed, asking him, "I saved you from that fucking frog, remember?" Enkrid clutches his chest in confusion, wondering if it was a frog at the end, amazed he survived. Rem leans in, questioning if he remembers him, his best friend forever, right? But our annoyed corporal looks away, before Rem covers his mouth to silence him. Enkrid looks at someone off-screen with a sharp, serious expression. As Cries, a young man with red hair, asks how much he spent to get him in here. Our veteran realizes he had been wondering why a regular soldier like him, who would usually be left to tend for himself, got into the infirmary tent. He reclines in bed as Cries smiles brightly, looking toward him. Enkrid, bandaged in bed, speaks firmly to another visitor, Jaxon, as Ragna tosses a small ointment container to him, instructing him to apply it twice a day. Enkrid holds the container, contemplating its origin, recognizing it as Jaxon's ointment, and remembering how much he hated sharing personal items. Meanwhile, Audin sits crying, clutching a metallic object, as a long-haired character looks down at Enkrid from beside his bed. Enkrid tells them all to leave, insisting he's not dead, then ponders why his squadmates are taking shifts, and if they could actually be worried about him. Ragna stands outside, eating an apple and glancing in, peeking at Enkrid, who lies in bed. Our tired hero doubts Ragna's worry, thinking that Rascal doesn't care one bit. In the tent, another soldier asks what Enkrid is looking at, questioning how a low-ranking soldier like him got into this area, as Enkrid's serious, weary expression holds firm. As our looping corporal recovers in the infirmary, an imposing elf commander strides into the tent, catching Enkrid completely by surprise, and she cuts right to it, asking him pointedly which group he's with. Her gaze is intense, like she's looking right through him, and Enkrid shifts uncomfortably, realizing this isn't a casual visit, as it dawns on him exactly who she is, realizing she's the new commander of the 4th Company. He quickly snaps to attention, like a coiled spring, reporting his full rank to the new superior. The commander just stares down at him, unblinking, leaving our stubborn corporal totally bewildered, wondering if she just came to say that. She immediately turns to walk away, but then abruptly stops, causing a nearby soldier to sit up and question her move. But she only glances back with a look that shuts down any further discussion, leaving Enkrid even more confused by her strange behavior. With a final look back toward the exit, the new commander simply exits the infirmary, leaving a stunned Enkrid to watch her go, his expression growing more pensive as she disappears. Determined fist clenches, and Enkrid firmly grasps the edge of his cot, a new resolve setting in, vowing to get back to full strength. He pulls on his boots, ignoring the curious look from a fellow soldier who asks where he's going. Enkrid makes for the tent entrance, as the other soldier mumbles about him acting tough despite being the lowest-ranking soldier. The light-haired soldier just watches him go, resting his chin in his hand. Out in the morning light, his sword gleams, and our determined swordsman is already back to practicing his swordsmanship, reflecting on his combat experiences. He remembers his last-moment stab technique, one of the few useful methods he spent a lot of money to learn when he was young, but then questions himself, wondering what if that last-ditch attack failed. He considers the risks, thinking it's not a good idea to put all his eggs in one basket, because if that one attack fails, he'll die, and then reflects on Rem's fighting style, where all of Rem's axe attacks are lethal. He grips his sword, thinking about what comes after his initial strike, his eyes burning with intense focus as he tries to find an answer, then turns to the light-haired soldier nearby, asking if they should train his grip strength. The soldier just sits on a stump, listening as Enkrid practices, trying to refine his moves. The soldiers face a picture of calm observation, while Enkrid's gaze remains intensely focused on his next move. Standing over the sitting soldier, deep in thought, his hand tightening around his sword hilt, the blade pointed skyward. He holds his sword aloft, looking toward his companion, who reacts with a surprised look as Enkrid stares intently at him, then initiates a conversation, saying he's seeing this for the first time, to which the soldier asks what he means. The light-haired soldier looks down, remembering something specific, and mutters that he suddenly remembered something. Enkrid watches him walk away, a serious expression on his face. He looks into the distance, deep in thought, while the light-haired soldier smiles toward him. Later, around a campfire, soldiers relax as one plays a harp, singing a song about the hero of the battlefield. One soldier clutches his head in frustration, another shouts nearby, and Enkrid walks past another squadmate who asks about his injuries, to which our hero replies with a neutral expression. A soldier with long brown hair works on his equipment. Back in the dimly lit barracks, a single candle burns. Enkrid lies in his cot, while a bunkmate wishes him good night. He closes his eyes, seemingly falling asleep. As an overhead view shows other soldiers sleeping in their beds, Enkrid's face peaceful in slumber. He wakes abruptly, clutching his head, wondering if the wandering minstrel came again today, and why he keeps coming when he's supposed to be a wanderer. Soldier shouts angrily that the minstrel is so loud, and saying the same thing as yesterday. And Enkrid's eye widens in shock, his face sweating and panicked as he whispers, "What? Don't tell me," realizing something terrible. He then kneels outside, listening as a soldier cleaning his weapon asks about his injuries. His lips pressed tight with stress and growing realization. The soldier on the crate calmly works on his equipment, oblivious, as Enkrid's eye shows the full weight of his understanding. A ghostly face appears in a blue mystical energy field, confirming, "I'm certain. It's the same day as yesterday." Enkrid stands, staring intensely with a panicked expression, asking himself if he died without noticing while he was sleeping. He realizes he died more hopelessly compared to the time he was stabbed, even though he feels terrible. He walks across the stone floor, his steps creating circular ripples in mystical blue energy, looking upward with renewed determination, knowing that this only makes him more determined. Outside, clouds drift across the starlit night sky above the military tents. Inside, a wooden mug sits next to a lit candle in the darkened room. Enkrid lies in bed, deep in thought, pondering how the enemy would need to get through all the defenses to get here, which is only possible for knights. He then wonders who killed him and how. His eye is wide with realization as he considers the assassin's likely identity, thinking that's unlikely, so it must be a hidden assassin, highly likely to be among them. He deduces that they know the location of the medical barracks, and his eyes widen with a chilling thought, realizing that a fairy's quiet and nimble feet are perfect for assassinations. He remembers the elegant, pale-haired woman from earlier, wondering if the reason she came that day was to figure out the location beforehand. A shadowy figure moves through the tent entrance into the encampment, and Enkrid thinks he needs to see it to confirm this. With an intense gaze, he prepares to wait for the assassin, deciding he just needs to wait, because there's only one entrance to the medical barracks. He figures he can end this by screaming and waking up the other soldiers the moment he sees her. But then, out of nowhere, he's struck by a poisoned needle in the neck, his eyes wide with shock. He can only stare, thinking, a poisonous needle. Gasping and clutching his throat, he struggles for air, screaming internally, "I didn't even see the assassin come in." He falls out of his bed, collapsing onto the floor like a puppet with cut strings as the poison takes hold. Realizing this is why he died without knowing the reason, and knowing, "I can't move in my body or speak," he sees his squadmates, including Platoon Commander Vengeance, lying dead in their beds, similarly struck. From the floor, Enkrid watches a mysterious hooded assassin standing by a bed, whispering, "Krang!" Gasping on the floor, he screams internally, realizing it's that bastard. The assassin raises a sword above a sleeping soldier's bed, identified now as the assassin, and then plunges the sword into the unsuspecting man, who dies in his sleep, his face frozen in an expression of shock. Enkrid can only watch, his eyes wide with horror as he witnesses the senseless murder, utterly powerless. The cheerful sound of a lyre rings out across the camp, playing a familiar tune about a battlefield hero. But for Enkrid, it's just the start of the same damn morning for the third time in a row, and he's absolutely fed up with it. Our loop-stuck corporal knows he has to stop the assassins, but he's dreading facing that eerie company commander right after, since the man managed to slip past his senses undetected before. He can't shake the feeling of déjà vu, having felt this exact same way just a few days ago. Despite all his hard-won battlefield experience, and every death he suffered to hone his skills, he feels just as helpless as he did before. Though our eternally dying hero decides to change tactics, quickly moving to ambush anyone who enters his tent, only to find himself pointing his sword at a startled squadmate. Enkrid quickly realizes his mistake, assuming the assassins would have already infiltrated the base, and his confused comrade just stares back. His squadmate, understandably irritated by the unexpected attack, fires back, "I was being sarcastic, you son of a bitch." Our corporal tries to process this new information. Just then, a blonde soldier strolls into the tent, casually asking if he should come back later. The tension in the tent is palpable, and Enkrid eyes the new arrival with suspicion. He suspects this newcomer is actually the target of the assassins, especially since they were so observant of him in the previous loop, but can't quite place him. As other squad members rest, Enkrid tries to engage the blonde soldier, mumbling something about getting involved in the assassination thanks to him. The blonde soldier just looks back at him with a confused expression, making Enkrid wonder if he's completely messed up his phrasing. He reflects that his conversational skills might be on par with Rem's, and the blonde soldier just shrugs, offering a blunt denial. Our awkward swordsman doesn't seem to have a good answer, and the soldier just accepts his silence. This makes another squadmate absolutely furious, yelling at Enkrid for asking questions if he was just going to accept such a non-answer. "Are you fucking kidding me? If you were just going to accept that kind of answer, then don't even ask in the first place, you shithead." He even points an aggressive finger at him. The fair-haired soldier watches the exchange intently, while the irritated squadmate grimaces in frustration. The fair-haired soldier, who seems to possess an aura like a knight, stands over the protesting squadmate, and a slight smirk plays on his lips. Enkrid looks up, his thoughts racing. The blonde soldier sternly questions the squadmate about speaking to a higher-up like that. "You, is that how you should be speaking? To your higher-up?" Enkrid internally doubts Krang's knightly aura, thinking he was just as powerless against the assassin as everyone else in the previous loop. Krang simply bids Enkrid goodnight and leaves, the candle casting long shadows. As other soldiers settle down to sleep, Enkrid is left to his thoughts. He wonders if the squadmate is now scared of Krang because of their earlier confrontation, but his mind quickly snaps back to the impending threat. He knows that if the assassins barge in, they'll all die again. Our stubborn corporal grips his sword, drawing the attention of a nearby squadmate, who asks him why he isn't sleeping. Enkrid warns him that assassins are about to invade their tent, hoping to convince him. The squadmate just rolls over, telling him he must have lost his mind, and everyone else sleeps peacefully, oblivious. Enkrid expects this reaction, but then a chilling thought strikes him, wondering how the assassin managed to spot him in the dark. His eyes widen in sudden realization, just as an unseen attacker slashes him across the neck. He barely registers the pain. As he falls backward, his body collapsing like a puppet with cut strings, barely wondering when they got there, the blade cutting clean through his skin. Our dying swordsman's eyes widen in horror as the loop resets once more. Enkrid wakes up for the fourth time, slamming his head in frustration, lamenting, "Cypress!" It's the fourth time, as he realizes he can't get help from Vengeance or Krang without any evidence of the assassins. He pictures his stern superior officer. How could he even try to convince them, asking them to scream right before the assassins attack? He peeks out of the tent, wondering if this is the moment or if it isn't. Suddenly, an assassin strikes, slashing his neck and cutting him off mid-scream. Our corporal falls, cursing, "Damn it! They're way too fast." He knows he can't get help from others, so he needs to ambush and defeat them himself before they even try anything, though he immediately doubts his chances. He gets slashed in the neck again, collapsing against the tent wall like a discarded rag doll, and wonders how he's supposed to fight an enemy he can't even see. His throat is cut open in a fatal strike, and he realizes he's going to die without being able to do anything at all. The cloaked figure grips their sword, victorious. The sun rises again on the battlefield, the same cheerful song playing, and Enkrid is back in his tent, exactly where he started. It's the 20th morning, and he's utterly distraught, having achieved nothing, failing for the 20th time in a row. Our perpetually dying swordsman stares at the ground, gritting his teeth in pure frustration. With renewed focus, our determined corporal realizes he needs to find a way to avoid the poison needle first. He walks through the camp, deep in thought about how to dodge attacks faster than his enemies can even perceive. He vows to deal with the assassins later, as he spots a familiar figure. It's Jaxon intently cleaning his dagger, his hand steady and precise. Sudden realization dawns on Enkrid as he mutters Jaxon's name. Rem, our hot-headed axe-wielder, rounds on him, asking why he calls Jaxon a perverted wildcat. Enkrid reminds Rem that he himself calls Jaxon that, explaining he's a dirty, sneaky pervert. He remembers how Jaxon never fights enemies head-on, much like a hidden assassin. Jaxon calmly looks up at Enkrid, acknowledging his title and asking if that is exactly what a cunning and perverted wildcat is like. Enkrid tells Jaxon that he assumes he would easily win against the assassins, a hint at his new plan. But our strategizing corporal knows he can't just bring Jaxon along without authority. That's a wall he has to climb by himself. Jaxon just looks up at Enkrid again, asking for his attention as squad commander. Enkrid considers Jaxon's stealth and ambush skills, knowing that no one has ever survived his sudden attacks, understanding that he must learn to become as undetectable as Jaxon himself. Enkrid, our stubborn corporal, begins a peculiar training session with Jaxon, asking him what he would do if someone were to stab him in the back, making Jaxon look up, instantly suspicious, as Enkrid stands over him with a serious, focused expression, explaining that to sense a true threat, you need to feel it coming from any direction, and Jaxon listens intently. Jaxon is still panting from whatever previous training Enkrid put him through, and then touches his own ear, looking confused by the whole concept of feeling an attack coming from behind his head. Resurrecting swordsman stares back with intense blue eyes, waiting for it to click, while other soldiers around the camp wonder aloud what Enkrid means by sensing an attack from the back of my head. Enkrid just gestures to a distant wagon, telling Jaxon to look carefully, observing the distance with a sharp gaze himself, as nearby soldiers remark on how he noticed something so far away, marveling if he really has eyes on the back of his head. Jaxon looks down, frustrated, thinking Enkrid is just messing with him. But then the wagon hits a bump, and a wheel spectacularly breaks, making Jaxon's eyes widen in sudden realization. Enkrid watches the scene calmly in profile, and then reprimands Jaxon, saying, "You must have spent too much time with that barbarian." A close-up of Jaxon's ear shows he can't believe what he just heard, while the damaged wooden wheel just sits there as undeniable proof. Jaxon looks downward with a serious, contemplative expression, starting to truly understand, as Enkrid explains his training method, that he doesn't need to see to sense what's around and how to practice by trying to listen. Our sound-sensitive soldier coaches him on honing his senses and isolating individual sounds, even if Jaxon had seemed too lazy to even respond to Enkrid properly before, because it's better to do this than have him on Enkrid's heels as a liability. Enkrid stares intensely with his blue eyes, focused and sharp, ready to keep pushing Jaxon. Night falls on the encampment, and Enkrid lies resting, eyes closed, training his new sense in the quiet. He's listening intently, as the silent shadow, Jaxon, drops something on the ground stealthily. Jaxon, a hooded figure, moves stealthily to start his nightly attack, while Enkrid's closed eyes are resting or sleeping, though always listening, his ear shone in dim light, picking up every faint sound, trying to categorize what's around him. He hears regular footsteps and identifies them as the patrol, sifting through the noise, and then registers the sound of the torches, trying to filter out everything else, wondering where his target is hidden. Enkrid listens intently, face partially obscured, trying to pinpoint the assassin. Cloaked figure jumps down from above, getting ready to strike, its presence barely registering, and Enkrid still lies with his eyes closed, listening intensely in the night, mentally demanding to know where that bastard's sound is. Then an unseen impact kicks up dust near the military tents, and a sharp blade pierces into Enkrid's neck from above, making him grunt in pain, as the blade stays lodged and he gasps, experiencing another painful death. He sits on the edge of his bed, head in his hands, as the loop resets to morning again, heralded by the usual shouts of Cyprus. He stands in the daylight with a serious expression, looking toward the tents, starting a new day of training. Close-up of Enkrid's eyes shows his sharp focus, ready for the grind, while another character gestures to their ear, talking about how once you are able to hear faint, faraway sounds, Enkrid listens intently, his ear and profile visible, understanding that he needs to keep going. He makes a sudden motion with his hand, reacting to a sound, demonstrating his progress, as a character points their finger while speaking, possibly continuing to guide his training. Another character clenches their fist while speaking, the conversation still going, as soldiers walk around the encampment during the day, gossiping about battles and bragging, but Enkrid stands with eyes closed in meditation, asking himself what sounds are mixed among the entangled sound waves, needing to listen, categorize, and isolate them. Our stubborn corporal sits on the ground with his eyes closed in deep meditation, trying to feel the waves of sound, even the rustling flags, but the flags still sound like one large flag to him, as he tries to count them and distinguish the unfamiliar from familiar ones. Sits and looks up at a comrade standing nearby, still meditating, and it's a blonde soldier who smiles down at him, standing while Enkrid sits on the grass, asking, "You're Enkrid, so and size fine, right?" Enkrid, ever the stickler, confirms it's not, but says if that's what he wants to do, so be it, maintaining his focus despite the blonde soldier continuing the conversation, joking that Enkrid is just sitting there like an idiot. Close-up of Enkrid's focused eyes shows he's not paying attention to him, utterly absorbed in his practice. Suddenly, a thin line appears in the darkness, signifying an incoming strike he just barely sensed, and a sword blade moves through the air in a blur, too fast to fully evade, before Enkrid is struck in the neck by a hidden blade again. He grimaces in pain, letting out a cry as he takes another fatal blow, as a hooded assassin stabs a soldier with a blade, performing his deadly routine. Close-up of the bloodied assassin's blade confirms his death once more. Another soldier collapses with a shocked expression on their face, just like before, but Enkrid opens one eye, showing his intense focus and determination in the darkness, even in death, learning from the strike. A hooded assassin leaps through the air in the night sky. His work done, another failure added to the tally. The assassin lands on the ground, preparing for another attack, but for Enkrid, it's just another cycle in his relentless training. A resurrecting swordsman lies dead on the ground with a sword through his chest. A clear failure, but not an ending. He sits up again on the ground in the military camp, eyes closed and meditating, ready for the next attempt, perpetually grinding. Seasoned swordsman Enkrid is finally holding his own against the assassin in his tent, forcing the hooded figure to recoil in pain with a grunt, a clear sign of progress. Enkrid prepares to strike with his small blade, facing the assassin with grim determination, while the hooded figure gritted his teeth in frustration and rage at being outmaneuvered. Enkrid looks on with a focused, intense expression, keeping his blade ready, as the assassin grunts in pain again, focusing on Enkrid, calling him a filthy rat. The hooded assassin lunges forward to attack Enkrid, enraged, but Enkrid deftly dodges and counters his attack in a swift movement, turning the tide. Our perpetually resetting hero looks calm and determined mid-combat, thinking he can handle this guy, who's not as good in combat as that stabbing pervert Krang. Enkrid looks focused with an intense gaze, wondering about his companions and their whereabouts. He still has the thought that vengeance is already, and Krang is still floating in his mind, but the hooded assassin continues his attack with renewed fervor, even as Enkrid knows he shouldn't let his guard down. Enkrid blocks a powerful strike from the hooded assassin, acknowledging that this guy is still an experienced killer. The hooded assassin strikes out with his dagger again, relentless, and Enkrid struggles in close quarters combat against his opponent, letting out a grunt of effort. Enkrid is knocked backward during the intense fight, but recovers quickly. He shows a pained but determined expression mid-fight, knowing he can't give up. Meanwhile, the mysterious elf knight, the fairy company commander, looks down on the scene from above. Enkrid grimaces, concentrating intensely while fighting, realizing that if he doesn't stab first, he'll die, so he lunges with his dagger at the hooded commander. The hooded attacker reacts in shock, realizing someone has helped Enkrid, yelling, "You had a guard!" A wide view shows Enkrid clashing with the hooded commander, their blades a blur. Our perpetually resetting hero fights with an intense, desperate expression, giving it his all. The hooded commander deflects an attack with two blades, a skilled opponent, but then is suddenly pushed back by a mysterious strike. Enkrid lands a counterattack with his dagger, seizing the opening. Close-up shot of the hooded commander recoiling in pain, as Enkrid continues the assault, pressing his advantage while the commander falls. Enkrid narrowly dodges a cloaked assailant while blades fly through the air, realizing someone is protecting him. He thinks about the identity of the person who just protected him, wondering if she was with the assassin, but now she came to protect them. Whichever it is, Enkrid lunges forward with his dagger held ready, knowing this is his chance. Enkrid lunges at the hooded attacker, leaving a trail of motion lines, like a coiled spring released. He descends upon the hooded assailant with a dagger, aiming for a decisive blow. The hooded assailant grimaces, letting out a grunt, as they are forced back by the relentless attack. Enkrid strikes the hooded assailant with his dagger, creating a spark, a precise hit. Close-up of the hooded assailant's clenched teeth and face in pain confirms the impact. Enkrid advances toward the hooded opponent, cloaked in darkness, not letting up. The opponent jumps away from the struggle, retreating into the shadows, forced to flee. Enkrid stands ready with a dagger, watching the opponent flee, thinking the assassin has escaped. Now Enkrid and our blonde buddy, Krang with his axe, stand together in the tent. Krang stares with a concerned, intense expression, taking in the situation. Enkrid stands in the foreground, with the elf-like woman, Esther, standing behind him, confirming her allegiance. The elf-like woman grips her weapon, looking focused, as if ready to act again. Her hand tightens on her weapon, and Enkrid realizes she was an ally until now, but her presence must remain a secret. Our seasoned swordsman, standing in the dim light and holding his dagger, concludes that she's not leaving any witnesses. Enkrid stands, staring intensely towards someone off-panel, a new threat perhaps. Enkrid, Krang, and Esther are positioned in the room with warm lighting, a tense standoff. Krang looks toward Enkrid with a serious expression, ready to consult. The elf-like woman bows her head, looking pensive, perhaps considering her options. Krang asks her if the assassin is dead yet, practical and direct. Enkrid looks down, deep in thought, realizing she must have knowledge about antidotes for the assassin's poison. Krang holds a finger to his chin, contemplating the situation, worried about the trouble if people discover an assassin was here. He talks to Enkrid while reflecting on the assassin's presence, the implications serious. Suddenly, a large medical tent is engulfed in flames at night, a dramatic solution. Soldiers rush toward the burning tent with buckets of water, shouting about a fire in the medical tent. Enkrid crouches near an unconscious man, seemingly observing the fire's aftermath, his part in the cover-up complete. He coughs as he watches the fire, satisfied that all traces of the assassin have now been removed. Enkrid stands near the burning tent, looking over the scene, knowing they'll take care of the aftermath. A bird flies across a starry night sky, signaling the passage of time and secrets. Krang and Esther walk through a dark forest, making their getaway. Esther walks while Krang speaks to her, confirming something with a simple affirmative. The elf-like woman looks thoughtful as she walks through the woods, her role still unclear. Krang carries a sack, looking determined, admitting he's been trying to avoid this path. Our perpetually resetting hero grips his sword handle tightly, his back to the viewer, ready for what comes next. Krang walks through a forest carrying a sack over his shoulder, his path now separate from Enkrid's. Close-up profile of our blonde buddy shows him smiling, saying, "Must have rubbed off on me and sigh." Krang and Esther walk away into a clearing in the woods, with Krang suggesting they continue. Their farewell ends with the promise to meet again in our respective roles. A sharp, curved scythe blade embedded in the ground shatters and dissolves, an illusion or tool removed. Enkrid looks up at the night sky, alone in his thoughts. He stands looking at a shadowy, spectral figure holding a lamp in the distance, a mysterious omen. Close-up of Enkrid's face in the dark, eyes closed, reveals his intense focus. Then his eyes snap open with intensity, ready for anything, knowing he'll see what's next. An extreme close-up of Enkrid's eye highlights his fierce determination. Enkrid's face is partially visible in the shadows, his expression grim. Back at the military encampment under a bright blue sky, Enkrid reflects that he's survived against silent death, but been confronted again by the repeating cycle. He works on his gear, noting he can sense most things now but couldn't sense Esther, and has a lot to do when he gets back. Enkrid stands and turns his head while holding a cloak over his shoulder, thankfully unhurt and able to return immediately. He turns to address a comrade sitting on a wooden crate, asking if he's talking to him and for his reason. Enkrid looks away with a troubled expression, wondering if his comrade is giving him shit for saving him, and why he dislikes him so much. The comrade, our hot-headed blonde, responds defiantly, asking if he needs any other reason to be angry. A close-up of Krang sitting on the crate shows him looking down with a grim expression, seemingly upset. Then the blonde soldier stands up and walks toward Enkrid, clearly spoiling for a fight. He questions Enkrid about returning to his squad, while Enkrid looks away, sensing trouble. Enkrid turns back to look at Krang with a curious expression, asking if something happened. A wide shot of the military encampment shows Krang explaining there's a rumor going around that the entire base is cursed. Our blonde buddy then unleashes a furious insult, calling someone an underdeveloped monkey. The blonde soldier delivers a powerful strike against the axe-wielding barbarian, Rem. Close-up of Rem's bearded face shows him taking the hit, clearly surprised. Rem retaliates and throws the blonde soldier into the air, with a fierce retort. Krang crashes into a tent, causing debris to fly, and other soldiers yell about their tent. He then attacks Rem with a wooden beam, warning them that they'll fuck you up too. Rem lands a heavy punch on Krang, knocking him back again. Rem readies his large battle axe for a fight, his expression stern, ready to finish this. Another soldier brandishes his sword while looking toward the side, lips curled in a snarl, joining the chaos. Enkrid looks on as debris from a destroyed tent flies into the air above him, thinking he doesn't know about the base being cursed. Close-up of Enkrid's face shows him breathing heavily with eyes closed, concluding that those bastards might as well be his curse. Enkrid stands in the encampment while his squad mates argue and fight nearby, finally stepping in to tell them to stop, accepting his role among these troublesome guys. As the morning sun paints the mountains, our determined corporal finally gets some much-needed rest, until he's suddenly wide awake, roused by a fellow soldier standing over his bed, looking down with a stern expression. Enkrid sits up, ready to face the day, and shares with his comrade that he has been practicing. He grips a thick, heavy tree branch, his hand tightening around the rough wood, then lifts the massive log high above his head, sweating and shirtless, continuing his relentless training. Our ever-grinding swordsman pushes himself with the heavy log by a gnarled tree, just like the other soldiers in the outdoor training area who are pushing boulders, and he stands next to a massive rock, hinting at his own use of it. Another soldier does push-ups with a giant boulder on his back, his foot stomping the ground with effort, while Enkrid looks on with a serious, focused expression. His blue eyes gaze intently, already lost in thought. Inside the tent, the hulking Inquisitor Audin stands over Enkrid, his long silver hair gripped in his hand. Enkrid glances up with his usual stoicism. The brawling brute Rem glares from the floor, having just tackled Ragna, angrily scolding him for sleeping instead of doing his duty. Rem snarls, his teeth bared in anger, and glares down as Ragna struggles to get up. Ragna quickly grabs a wooden training sword from the ground. He swings it aggressively, but Rem easily deflects the strike with his arm. Just then, our corporal, who just won't quit, enters the room, asking if they are fighting again. He tells them to give it a rest, explaining that wanton violence solves nothing, with Audin standing calmly behind him. Rem glares back, asserting, US, still ready to fight. But Enkrid, ever pragmatic, just tells Ragna to start cooking if it's his turn for duty. Rem grabs a towel, looking annoyed with Ragna still behind him. Ragna catches the towel Rem throws, then casually tells him, away, you smell. Rem, surprisingly, just smiles slightly and admits, smells good, THOUGH? As Enkrid cuts in, telling him to stop picking fights for no reason. Rem looks at Enkrid and asks, NOTICED, revealing a hint of pride. Later, Enkrid stands focused, his sword ready, preparing for another training session. The army tents stretch out against the backdrop of the mountains, a common sight. Enkrid grunts, struggling in combat, as Rem lunges forward aggressively, shouting that our corporal needs to take hits better. Rem attacks, and Enkrid blocks the strike with his sword. Our unyielding squad leader looks up with a determined expression. An axe swings through the air, as Rem delivers a powerful downward strike against Enkrid. Enkrid blocks it tightly, preparing for the next move, while Rem maintains his intense focus. Enkrid unleashes a counterattack, attempting to stab, thrusting his sword at Rem, and their weapons clash violently. Rem delivers another heavy downward axe swing against Enkrid, who struggles intensely to block the powerful blow, his face showing the pain and pressure of the spar. Rem continues his aggressive assault, forcing Enkrid to the ground. He pins Enkrid down, exerting his physical dominance. Enkrid looks up, breathing heavily, reflecting on the repetitive training. Rem mocks him, asking if he has anything new because that same stab already bores him. Enkrid grips his sword while kneeling, acknowledging his past failures but realizing, but now I know. He stands alone near a tree, contemplating his unique ability to improve, thinking that he is different than before. The soldier who refuses to fail looks intensely resolute, showing his determination to keep pushing forward. Rem observes him, critically noting that Enkrid's skills are completely lacking, but then flashes a sharp, predatory smile, adding that he doesn't get sick of it seeing those eyes. Rem stands ready with his axe, pleased with Enkrid's progress. Later that night, heavy rain falls over the military encampment, the tents visible under the downpour. Inside a tent, Enkrid watches the rain and thinks that the rain starts and stops at will. He inspects his bare foot with a grimace, muttering, fuck. Mushrooms are gonna grow on my feet at this rate. Ragna sleeps soundly on a bed, while Audin kneels nearby, focusing intently on his clasped hands. Rem confronts Enkrid near the tent flap, annoyed by something happening outside. Enkrid runs a hand through his hair, looking stressed and frustrated. He looks up at Jaxon, who stands nearby within the tent. Jaxon explains to Enkrid that now that he thinks of it, Vengeance was talking about something, that their encampment is cursed. Our perpetually exhausted squad leader sits on his bed, rubbing his head, looking utterly drained. He watches Jaxon, who continues to gaze out at the rain. Jaxon stands still, staring into the downpour. Enkrid asks Jaxon why he is standing at the entrance, and the quiet assassin replies that he is training his senses. Jaxon clarifies that he does it because of the downpour, as the heavy rain intensifies his senses. Rem sits up in bed, yelling insults at Jaxon, calling him a stray cat and asking what good that serves. Rem continues to rant at Jaxon, while a squad mate reads a book unfazed. Jaxon stands with arms crossed, ignoring the cacophony, thinking about how loud it is and that he can't even hear the rain. Meanwhile, Audin towers over Ragna, who is lying on a bed, asking if he wants him to look at his stance again. The tent is a chaotic scene of squad mates relaxing, arguing, and training. The reading squad mate remains absorbed in his book, oblivious to the noise. Audin smiles with his eyes closed, appearing content. Jaxon maintains a serious, unreadable look on his face. Elsewhere, commanders gather at a table, discussing military strategy, with one reminding them to keep their soldiers in check. Another commander asks for suggestions to fill gaps in their plans. Esther, the mysterious mage, cuts through the room's tension, asking what about the 444th squad leader. A commander questions her suggestion, wondering about that useless guy and if he isn't a little dumb. Esther leans over the table, pressing her point, clearly about to make a case for Enkrid. Back in his tent, Enkrid stands, perhaps sensing or simply reflecting, unaware that Esther is advocating for him in a high-level meeting. The next day, under a bright sun, our diligent leader stands in a tent, listening as a superior officer informs him he's being sent to the scouts. Our suddenly worried corporal looks up, confirming the unexpected assignment, being sent to the scouts. Later, near his sword and a sack of gear, Enkrid speaks to a woman, wondering if Esther, SHE's not going to kill me. Now that Krang has left, right? Our regressing swordsman looks at the woman in the tent, clearly anxious about his mysterious allies. Rem, ever the loyal troublemaker, holds his axe and tells Enkrid, I can't help you get out of it, you know. He sits on the bed, insisting he wouldn't tell Enkrid to do something like that. As our observant corporal talks to his squad mates, they lament losing their precious little squad leader. The squad mates hang out together, quietly, a stark contrast to their usual chaos. Enkrid asks Sinar if they said he's supposed to scout the tall grass fields. Sinar, working on his gear, replies that he's noticing disturbances. This instantly fires up Rem, who yells that it's the first step in overcoming an ambush, convinced some sneaky bastard thinks he can teach Enkrid again. Sitting alone, our troubled corporal looks down with a pained expression, thinking that nobody will prevent them from fighting once he's gone. But even he agrees there's nobody better suited than him, wondering if it's right to leave them here. Enkrid sits and wraps his hands, surrounded by his squad mates. Rem readies his axe, muttering a curse and thinking that the one place he ended up being useful was as the leader of a squad of leftovers. Suddenly, a mysterious figure with long hair holds a blade. A boot steps forward, hinting at combat. Intense eyes stare at each other, as our regressing swordsman defends against a cloaked assailant with his sword. Then Rem swings his large axe downward with force, showing his combat prowess. Rem looks at Enkrid with a questioning and concerned expression, asking if he's brave or stupid. He and another squad member share a quiet moment, while our focused corporal, his face tight, thinks that compared to them, he's not much of a loss in combat power, knowing these goons are really skilled, so they can't lose them. He continues, reassuring himself there's no need for this sudden contemplation, because he knows where he stands in terms of skill. A group of soldiers hike through a lush, forested mountain path, and Enkrid walks with another soldier, knowing the scouts will go to the front lanes, so he can spend his time training his senses. Another soldier points aggressively at our leftover squad leader, challenging him to a fight. A group of soldiers sneer at him. The soldier confronts Enkrid in a tense standoff. Our observant corporal just observes them, thinking they're loud and don't understand what scouting means, noting the squad leader is completely green and wondering if this scouting mission will end well. Soon, footprints are visible on a muddy forest path. The scout leader kneels to examine the tracks. The scout leader looks back with a confident, cocky grin, but Enkrid is skeptical, knowing news travel in groups of at least 20, thinking the leader is seriously going to fight that, and wondering what's going on inside his head. He walks side by side with the cocky soldier. A new leader, Henry, is introduced, smiling and gesturing. A group of soldiers hike through the woods on a sunny day. Later, a soldier stands alone in the forest at night, holding his head, frustrated that the scout squad's day was wasted, realizing it was a new for sure. Another soldier lies on the ground, while the first clutches his head, desperate for results. Leather boots walk along a dirt path. Enkrid and his squadmates stand in a field of tall grass, which they jokingly call the uselessly tall grass field. The group moves through the dense, tall grass. A frustrated soldier shouts while walking. Enkrid and another scout look intently at the grass around them. Our focused corporal pushes aside the tall grass to see better, as the squad moves in a line. Another soldier looks forward, surprised that Enkrid isn't complaining and is taking this seriously, because treading through these tall leaves isn't easy, and he thought Enkrid would give up soon. But Enkrid, examining the grass, notices there aren't many animal droppings. He observes the environment, realizing that in a place where food is abundant for them, this lack of droppings is a crucial sign. Suddenly, a powerful creature with a dark, furry paw steps onto the ground, and Enkrid has a sudden, shocked realization. Close-up of his terrified, wide eye reflects immediate danger as Esther in her panther form shouts, "Everyone, get down!" Enkrid lunges forward to push his squadmate down to safety, just as multiple arrows strike the soldiers in the dense grass. The soldier reacts with intense shock and fear. Several hidden enemy archers in cloaks aim their crossbows from the grass, as the squad is ambushed, soldiers reacting to the incoming fire. Enkrid and his squad desperately try to defend themselves against the hidden archers, but a soldier cries, "Gah!" as our brave corporal looks back in shock to see his squadmate hit by an arrow, the impact making him crumple instantly, like a house of cards. A regenerating corporal is caught in a rain of projectiles, a crossbow bolt whizzing by as he grimaces, narrowly dodging a spear strike thanks to Jaxon's listening technique. He's intense and wide-eyed, knowing that while the skill helps, it's barely enough in the overwhelming chaos of battle. As he crawls through the grass, projectiles still raining down, he realizes Jaxon's advice is only helpful, not a silver bullet, as he suffers another injury. An armored soldier shouts at him, wondering if he wants his head lopped off for trying to avoid an ambush. But our determined squad leader is already wondering if he needs to find a way out alone. The battlefield glows at sunset as weapons fly, and a voice screams for everyone to run. Enkrid is struck through the chest by a spear, his own sword piercing an enemy as he's skewered again. He struggles through the tall grass, knowing it's okay because he can always find another way, with the repeating todays on his side. Multiple spears slam into him while he kneels, and he's quickly surrounded and skewered by soldiers in the grassy field. His hand grips the earth in his final moments of this loop, as enemy soldiers search nearby, yelling for their comrades to find them. An enemy observes that their uniforms are dyed green, as if they've been preparing for an ambush. Our time-looping soldier collapses, heavily wounded, wondering what could possibly be worth guarding in a field like this to warrant such preparation. Through the tall grass, he spots a distant campsite, a flag waving in the night wind, and his eyes widen with a chilling realization. Then he's executed by a soldier with a sword. Enkrid shouts angrily into the grass, cursing the Aspen bastards and vowing to uncover what they're hiding. His squadmates look exhausted, explaining they've already tried that dozens of times, and once they head in, there's no making it out alive, but Enkrid is determined to find out what they're hiding. One squad member asks if giving up this objective means he doesn't have to die, and Enkrid just stares intently, knowing that might be the end of this today. Another squad member screams that he won't run from this wall. A scarred soldier puts his hand on Enkrid's shoulder, then confronts him, tired of licking Enkrid's childish ass, saying there's a limit to how much bullshit he can tolerate. Enkrid grabs the soldier's arm, the two men facing each other in the tall grass. He leans in, speaking with a cold certainty. He won't survive alone, but he's going to use everyone's strengths to make it out alive together, even Scout Squad leader Andrew Gardner, who apparently survives the longest. Enkrid eyes a soldier standing in the grass, noticing his trained posture, and concludes a normal soldier wouldn't have a bodyguard, but another soldier reacts, thinking he can't be an experienced noble since he's too eager for results and seems to lack skill, so he must be some rich lord's son. Whatever he is, the soldier can't keep following his orders. The soldier shouts an insult, but Enkrid cuts him off, telling him he talks too much. He makes a throat-slitting gesture. The soldier lunges forward, sword raised, and Enkrid prepares for the attack, knowing he'd normally struggle against someone so skilled. But this guy is obviously looking down on him. The soldier delivers a powerful downward swing, but our corporal stands firm, looking up at the incoming attack. His hand meets the blade, and he successfully blocks the soldier's sword strike with his bare hand and forearm. The soldier looks utterly shocked, as Enkrid delivers a powerful counterstrike, eliciting a cry of pain. The soldier's face is wide-eyed in agony. Enkrid stands tall over the defeated soldier, who kneels on the ground. Two soldiers in the background look on in stunned silence. A group of soldiers watches Enkrid's back, one looking around with a concerned and alert expression. Enkrid looks downward, focused and serious. Another soldier sweats, a grim expression on his face. Enkrid keeps his head bowed in a contemplative mood, then gazes intently toward the horizon under a bright sky. He leads his squad through the tall field of grass. The squad moves stealthily through the tall grass at sunset, a soldier's face illuminated by the setting sun. One soldier questions another, who explains he wants to marry a beauty who runs a flower shop. He asks Enkrid about his goals, while two others discuss mundane dreams of opening their own business. A soldier looks on as Enkrid stands in the background. The soldier stares intently into the tall grass, looking alert, and soldiers' boots step onto the trail during their patrol. They walk through the brush, observing their surroundings. Enkrid looks forward with a resolute expression, telling them to make it out alive. The squad members glance at him as they march through the grass. A soldier, with a stern expression, declares there's nothing more motivating than life itself. He points toward a location, planning for them to break through the enemy, who he assumes will appear soon. Enkrid listens with a serious and focused expression, but a soldier raises his bow and fires an arrow into the grass. An arrow strikes a soldier and Enkrid thinks, "I thought wrong." Two shocked soldiers realize they are under ambush, yelling in alarm. Enkrid draws his sword, shouting, "What?" A squad member curses in frustration during the ambush. As Enkrid and his squad engage in close-quarters combat, he realizes that to fight with the upper hand, they need to find the enemies first and ambush them. Our tactical corporal knows that to fight with the upper hand, he has to move through the field, strike an enemy, and find them first to ambush them. A gloved hand clutches a bloodied sword. Enkrid confronts an enemy who shouts, "What is that?" as our time-looping tactician stabs the soldier in the neck, eliminating him. He fights another soldier, thinking they need to take advantage of their confusion to reduce their numbers as much as possible. He strikes another enemy, considering his next tactical move, knowing if he brings Andrew, his bodyguard will obviously follow. Enkrid moves to strike another enemy in the tall grass. He looks intense, realizing the enemy, originally numbering 12, has been cut down to 8 people, so their chances of success are much higher. An enemy soldier panics, yelling for help, wondering how many attackers there are. Feet run through the dense field. Enkrid and his squadmates group together. Our unyielding leader's face is focused on the fight. Enkrid delivers a powerful, bloody strike to an enemy soldier, then continues his assault, striking another. A dark panther-like creature, Esther, moves stealthily through the grass. Esther springs toward an enemy soldier, who reacts in shock, cursing. Esther leaps through the air to attack, like a spring uncoiling, eliciting a cry of "this crazy animal." An enemy soldier attempts to spear the panther. Enkrid violently slashes an enemy soldier as Esther assists in the ambush. His eyes widen as he narrates his realization. They were chasing the beast he saw. A close-up of Esther's glowing eye confirms it. Enkrid stands in the tall grass, looking toward Esther, contemplating the tactical success, realizing they failed to notice their ambush because they were focused on chasing her, and he won't let her die easily. Soldiers from the Madmen squad engage Aspen forces, panting. Enkrid looks intensely at the battlefield, while Esther watches nearby. A close-up of Esther, watchful in the grass. Enkrid and his squadmates press forward through the golden field, reflecting that even after multiple cycles, it was impossible to save everyone. He looks resolute, holding his weapon, then strikes down another enemy soldier. He guides his squad, telling them they need to turn right here to avoid enemies. Because of today's repetitions, he knows the quantity and locations of all the enemy soldiers. Enkrid explains that these enemies need to be disposed of quickly, or else they will hamper their movements. He strikes down an enemy soldier with a cry. Enkrid and a squadmate move through the grass, warning that when it gets dark, it'll be difficult to find the exit. Squadmate pauses, asking why they're going further inside. A close-up shows Enkrid's determined face. He looks back at his squadmate with urgency. Enkrid stands in the grass, holding his sword upright. He looks intently at his sword, remembering a past conversation. Enkrid holds his sword towards his squadmate, a close-up of his hand gripping the hilt. He and his squadmate observe the field, a close-up showing the squadmate's shock. He remembers an elderly figure, like his father, who had given up on everything and just wasted the family wealth. An extreme close-up of an eye, then another eye. A man, Andrew, sits by a bedside holding a sick person's hand, telling them their house might be finished. But even so, he urged, they must earn people's trust, become a leader, and rebuild their family. Close-up of the squadmate's face shows intense shock and wide eyes. Enkrid looks ahead with a serious, determined gaze in the middle of battle. He and his squad members crouch low, moving through the tall grass. Enkrid looks forward alertly. He looks towards his squadmates, instructing them, declaring that a squad follows the orders of its captain. Enkrid kneels in the field, giving instructions. Until he gives the signal, they are to follow him while crouching quietly. The squad follows him closely in a line through the grass. Arrows fly through the air in the sunset light. A close-up of a boot stepping onto the ground. As night falls, our stubborn corporal Enkrid and 2 of his squadmates move through a dimly lit enemy tent camp, with one soldier warning him that they're deep inside enemy territory and could easily be surrounded and killed. His scarred squadmate looks worried, but Enkrid stays completely calm and focused, listening to their concerns. The scarred soldier quickly tells his nervous squadmate Mac to be quiet, as another soldier jumps forward, pressing against a tent wall to check their surroundings. He peers ahead with a tense expression, just as Enkrid calmly uses his sword to rip straight through a tent canvas, thinking they have to trust the squad leader in this situation, especially with the moon hidden by clouds. His squadmate reacts in shock, wondering what Enkrid is doing ripping through the tent. But Enkrid simply peers into the now open tent, realizing it's completely empty. He and his squad run stealthily through the dark, deserted encampment, our determined leader crouching low to observe their surroundings, while his squadmates think he's too reckless, going through the enemy camp. Yet another soldier looks perplexed, because, despite being clearly in the enemy encampment, they haven't seen a single enemy soldier. Enkrid reaches out towards a flag in the deserted camp, wondering how this is possible, his expression serious and intense. He leans against a tent, remembering how he's infiltrated this camp dozens of times before, and the last time he touched that flag, the entire base instantly focused its attention on him. A persistent corporal explains to his squadmate that the flag is the main objective the Aspen soldiers want to hide and protect, showing a view of the captured Aspen flag among battlefield debris. Enkrid and his squadmates look on with determined faces, his own eyes intensely focused on the task ahead. Meanwhile, a female soldier, likely Esther, stares ahead, contemplating Enkrid's appointment, wondering if the company commander who appointed this nobody knew about a secret mission. An extreme close-up of a soldier's mouth as he speaks, while Enkrid and a squadmate observe the camp, wondering if he suddenly took over command of the squad and infiltrated the camp just to complete some secret mission. Enkrid looks forward with his usual calm and stoic expression, then gives his orders, explaining that one group will act as bait, drawing the enemy's attention, and a soldier immediately volunteers to be part of the bait group. Enkrid watches him with a thoughtful, approving look, thinking that's better for him as the soldier walks away. A squadmate stops and looks towards Enkrid before moving out. Then two soldiers from the squad walk together, readying for the mission. Enkrid holds a serious, determined expression, focusing on the combat to come. Suddenly, an enemy soldier falls back, dropping like a puppet whose strings are cut, struck by an unseen force in the darkness, letting out a gasp. A stubborn corporal advances through the camp, surprising an enemy soldier holding a torch, who immediately shouts, "Intruders!" Enkrid and his fellow soldier advance rapidly through the enemy camp, swords drawn, as Enkrid rushes past burning tents, navigating the chaos of the night infiltration. We get a close-up of his bandaged, bloodied hand gripping the shaft of a torch, its flickering firelight illuminating his determined face as he looks ahead. But then a mysterious, hulking shadow rises silently behind him, looming over our hero. Our unyielding regressor narrowly dodges a massive, unseen strike, his eyes wide in reaction, leaping back to avoid a powerful attack from an enemy soldier, his face showing intense shock as he realizes the sheer speed of his opponent. He struggles to regain his balance while his opponent looms overhead, realizing he hadn't heard the enemy coming at all. An enemy knight stands over him, radiating dark, dangerous killing intent, a new combatant he hasn't seen in any of his previous to-days. Enkrid looks up at him with a sharp, calculating gaze. The mysterious knight sneers down at Enkrid, calling him, "You rat," while Enkrid wonders where someone as strong as this guy came from. A persistent corporal stares back with a grim, focused expression, preparing for the fight ahead, his gaze sharp and calculating. He looks on as flames consume a tent structure nearby, and a soldier reacts in horror, shouting in alarm about the fires consuming the tents. Soldiers run past in chaos, as an unseen commander shouts orders to get the intruders. Ignoring the flames for a moment, Enkrid shouts urgently for them to put the fire out first. He looks on with intense focus, mapping out his escape route. Knowing Mac baited away most enemies, he got the attention of the rest, and Andrew set the tents on fire in the meantime. A heavy strike hits the ground nearby, causing debris to fly, and Enkrid grips his sword handle tightly, reacting to the enemy's close proximity. He points towards the enemy position to direct his squadmates, his eye widening as his senses hone in on the threat, realizing he can see it. A blurred motion arc indicates a strike heading right for him, the blade descending rapidly toward Enkrid's neck. His neck is exposed as the lethal blow arrives, the blade impacting, leaving a small mark on his skin. Enkrid's face captures the moment of lethal impact as the enemy's blade slices through space. He is knocked back by the force of the strike in the chaos of the camp, his eyes widening in shock as he realizes his impending death. Fatally wounded and hunched over, Enkrid struggles, letting out a groan before admitting, "Ah, that was the most perfect stab that I could muster." The soldier who won't stay dead closes his eyes, preparing for the inevitable reset as the enemy soldier looms over him. Defeated, Enkrid reflects that he can't beat this opponent at his current skill level. In a flashback, he's stabbed in the side during a fierce battle, remembering how he barely managed to get here. He falls in battle, pierced by multiple arrows during an ambush in the fields, kneeling on the ground, defeated and surrounded, as another soldier falls nearby. An extreme close-up of Enkrid's eye shows him contemplating the nature of his current reality, wondering if he thought he finally beat the challenges of today. He readies his sword, looking intense as he prepares to face the real challenge, wondering if this new enemy is the true wall of today. Close-up view of a soldier's legs moving suggests a tactical movement, but Enkrid grips his face, bloodied and exhausted from his recurring struggle, realizing he's going to die unceremoniously if he challenges him now. He bows his head, sword in hand, planning his next tactical move. He'll have to take over control of the squad again, escape through the fields, and repeat countless todays in the process. He looks directly forward with a cold, determined gaze, knowing that after all those meaningless deaths, his determined face showing his eyes focused on his goal. Enkrid looks forward with a sharp, determined gaze, his face bruised and battle-worn, and in a close-up on his face, he makes a defiant declaration to his enemy, "I'm going to beat you." He lunges forward with his sword drawn, preparing for a high-speed strike, dashing forward while swinging his sword in a powerful arc, knowing he will. Unyielding regressor crouches in a defensive stance, holding his sword ready, thinking, "I will," and then shouts, "Overcome this wall." We see a close-up on armored shoulders during the intense combat as Enkrid clashes his sword against the enemy's blade, with his powerful opponent exerting force on him during the sword clash. The enemy presses his sword down toward Enkrid, dominating the exchange. Enkrid reacts in shock, realizing his attack was easily parried, and he's backed against a wall by the enemy. The enemy swings his blade down toward him, but Enkrid dodges and slides beneath the attack, quick as a bolt of lightning, avoiding a fatal blow. He looks up from the ground, shocked that his opponent swung up from that position. Enkrid clashes swords with the enemy again, his feet skidding across the ground during the fight, barely holding his own. He looks at the enemy with sweat on his brow, observing his fast and precise movements, struggling in combat as the enemy dominates the exchange with superior skill, realizing there's such a huge gap in skill that he has no opportunity to counterattack. Our persistent corporal is knocked backward by the enemy's powerful strike, but he quickly regains his stance, eyes intense and focused on the incoming attack. The enemy attacks with overwhelming force, his blade descending toward Enkrid, and then surprisingly lands a strike with his bare hand while still wielding his blade. Enkrid reacts in shock to the enemy's unorthodox and powerful fighting style, hit by the back of his hand with the sudden force of a thrown hammer, and his sword is knocked aside by the heavy impact. The enemy presses the attack, his eyes glowing with malice as he closes in on Enkrid, whose blade slashes through the air, narrowly missing him. Enkrid narrowly avoids the strike, his sword positioned defensively, then retreats, looking back at his opponent with a strained expression. He barely blocks an incoming strike, his sword trembling under the force, as Enkrid and the enemy clash amidst the encroaching fires of the camp. The fire is spreading rapidly towards the flag, catching it ablaze atop the encampment poles. Enkrid looks toward a comrade who is shouting urgently, with a close-up on an unseen character screaming in panic. The screaming comrade cries out in desperation, while Enkrid observes his opponent with a tense expression, thinking this guy isn't going to go down without a fight, even as the fire rages on the battlefield. Close-up of Enkrid's face shows his eyes fixed intensely on the battlefield, his expression determined and focused. Enkrid looks on with a sharp, intense gaze, watching his opponent while holding his sword, preparing for the next move. He looks surprised as he notices his opponent retreating, wondering if he's backing off this easily. Enkrid watches the battlefield as flames consume the encampment flags, questioning if this truly wasn't the wall he needed to overcome. He grips his sword handle tightly, contemplating his next move, realizing that if this isn't the challenge he needs to overcome right now, then he still needs to improve, with his intense eye reflecting his resolve to keep training. Comrade rushes toward Enkrid in the chaotic, burning encampment, screaming that they need to go now. Enkrid reacts to the comrade's shout while standing in the burning camp, amidst the spreading fire on the battlefield. A close-up on Enkrid's face shows his deep focus and realization. An unknown soldier shouts the order to retreat as Enkrid sheathes his sword. Enkrid shouts, acknowledging the order to retreat, as soldiers rush to put out the fire consuming the encampment flags. Our determined leader leads his squad as they retreat through the woods, with one squadmate communicating that one of their group disappeared and only 5 of them are left. Close-up of Enkrid's face shows his intense focus and fatigue during the retreat, as a squadmate coughs while moving alongside him in the forest. Enkrid and his squad retreat while being pursued by enemy soldiers in the burning environment, and our soldier who won't stay dead engages in close quarters sword combat against an enemy pursuer. He clashes with enemy soldiers in a vertical frame showing the intensity of the struggle, and strikes an enemy soldier during their desperate retreat. Enkrid delivers a lethal blow to an enemy soldier in the midst of the forest retreat, and continues his defensive assault against pursuing enemies. He shouts at his squadmates to not hesitate and to keep running, to maintain their pace during the retreat. Squadmate wonders if that means it's harder for them to run too, but Enkrid looks forward with a determined gaze while running, calling it a hunter's path. A close-up of Enkrid's face shows his focused and alert expression, showing the legs and boots of squad members running through the forest. A persistent corporal and a squadmate continue their exhausted run, and Enkrid gestures towards a path, acknowledging it took the efforts of every squad member to get this far. A hand rests on Enkrid's head, indicating a moment of exhaustion or care, as Enkrid looks forward with a serious, exhausted expression while in the woods. Enkrid and his squad members run across an open field as the sun is finally rising. They stand in a camp, exhausted, as another soldier questions them about what happened. Another shouts a greeting to them. Enkrid's squad members collapse or rest on the ground in the camp, utterly spent. Broken spears and flags litter the ground in a grim scene, showing the aftermath of the battle. Cloaked figure asks a blonde soldier standing in the camp, "The flag." A close-up shot identifies the blonde soldier as the Grey Dog Company commander, who stands looking at the battlefield remnants, realizing she really cannot understand how this happened, as the soldiers stationed at the tall grass fields were the Grey Dog's best of the best. Dark wolf silhouette stands atop a rock under a glowing red moon, representing an independent company with independent operational control, possessing a persistent temperament and a need to connect with its decided target. An extreme close-up of a wolf-like creature's snarling face with glowing eyes reinforces the image. Soldier seen from behind walks toward the commander in the camp, and Mitch Hurrier, the Grey Dog Company platoon commander, speaks with a serious expression, admitting that if it wasn't for the fire, he would have ended Enkrid right there. 2 soldiers from the Grey Dog Company converse in a desolate, dark camp, with a close-up of a character's chin and mouth while speaking. Enkrid sits alone in his tent, looking down at his hands with a grave demeanor, thinking intensely about the challenging opponent he failed to defeat, admitting it still bugs him that he faced that wall but couldn't get over it and wanted to keep fighting. A close-up on the lower face of Enkrid shows his troubled expression. Close-up of Mitch Hurrier's eyes shows them focused and determined, ready for their next encounter. Enkrid's intense, focused gaze with his blue eye shows he's not giving up. While a spinning axe flies through the air, our axe-wielding barbarian Rem is absolutely bored out of his mind, wondering why his squad leader isn't back from recon, and he grips the handle of his battle axe, sitting on the edge of his bed, looking completely fed up with the inaction. He looks down with a grim expression, contemplating the very real possibility of Enkrid's death, admitting to himself that while our stubborn corporal has gotten better, he's still a small fry who could easily die, and he actually liked him. But Rem concludes there's nothing interesting to do if he's dead, so what can you do? Just then, Ragna sits up in bed, yawning, brushing his hair behind his ear, and looks toward Rem, who then starts talking to him, holding up a finger and even cracking a smile, gesturing dramatically. Meanwhile, Ragna puts his sword back into its sheath after their conversation, while our battle-hardened corporal stands before a seated officer who pointedly asks if he accidentally burned down the entire enemy camp. Esther, in her human form, looks at Enkrid with a serious expression and murmurs, "Lucky." Our resurrecting swordsman bows his head respectfully toward her, and Esther stands with her arms crossed, looking thoughtful, admitting she'd hoped he would achieve something, but never expected anything this big. Enkrid looks out over the camp, his back to the viewer, wondering who this mysterious knight really is, then stares ahead as another soldier talks to him, thinking he really can't figure out what Esther is thinking. A grateful soldier thanks Enkrid, telling him he's alive because of him, and Enkrid bows his head as the soldier gestures, responding that he'll see him if their paths cross again. The two soldiers walk away, and our determined corporal turns his head to watch them leave. Wide shot of the camp shows Enkrid watching the soldiers move away, and as he walks through the camp, he thinks to himself, wondering if that really was his best, because while he did manage to bring back 4 squadmates alive, he still lost 2 of his squad members, convinced that if he were a little stronger, he could have saved them all. The camera pans over the military camp tents, then focuses on Enkrid's face, shaded as he looks down, adjusting his gear belt, looking focused and determined to use his present moments as stepping stones, vowing to prevent repeating the same day over and over. He stares with intense, focused eyes, knowing he needs to become stronger. Suddenly, Rem and Ragna are mid-spar, lunging at each other with weapons while Enkrid watches, and someone yells that those crazy bastards are at it again. Rem swings his heavy axe down powerfully at Ragna, who braces to block the brutal strike. Rem has a wild, intense expression as he absolutely dominates the sparring session, while Ragna looks shocked and overwhelmed by the ferocity. A training fanatic observes the brutal spar between his squad members with a serious expression, realizing he's sparred with them countless times but has never seen those expressions. He calls them animals, then watches Rem and Ragna lock weapons, staring intensely at one another, concluding that they never needed to go all out against him. Enkrid looks forward with a determined, resolute gaze, knowing he needs to make them show those faces in front of him too. Rem and Ragna continue their high-speed, intense sparring match, when Ragna calls out to Enkrid, asking, "Squad leader." Rem and Ragna are shown in the camp as Enkrid approaches, with Rem asking why he's hiding like a cat and demanding he report his return. Enkrid stands near his squad members, immediately noting Ragna's injury, to which Ragna replies it's just a little scratch. Rem listens to Enkrid as they stand together in the camp, with our corporal immediately critiquing Rem's block of Ragna's recent attack. Enkrid looks down at Ragna during their conversation, who looks up with a confused expression, asking, "Seriously? Right now?" A close-up on Enkrid's bandaged hands and midsection shows him questioning the technique. Our swordsman continues talking, then looks up toward the sky with a thoughtful, serious expression. The battalion commander, now knowing of the enemy force's ambush, issues commands to his troops. Close-up view of Enkrid's hand shows him adjusting the white bandages around his neck. Rem eats with chopsticks while watching Enkrid, who is putting on his shirt in the background. Rem looks at Enkrid while holding a ladle, both of them silent. Later, Enkrid lies in his bedroll, sleeping with his mouth slightly open, then sits up on his bedroll in the tent, looking around at dawn, stretching his arms out. He grips the hilt of his sword tightly with his bandaged hand, then grabs his gear and walks toward the tent exit. Character with light hair and a side braid shouts loudly outside the tent, standing with their back to us, walking forward as Enkrid begins a swinging motion with his sword. Our tireless trainee begins another swinging motion, then swings his sword with great force. Enkrid kneels on the ground after his swing, dropping his sword, his face sweating and looking utterly exhausted. Rem stands with his arms crossed, watching Enkrid, thinking that he learned the fundamentals all wrong, and that to get stronger you need to learn them properly when you start. Then looks off to the side with a serious, thoughtful expression while holding his axe, musing that it should be impossible for him to get stronger, even with this training. But then, an extreme close-up on Enkrid's blue eye shows his intense focus. Rem looks down with a contemplative expression, wondering why Enkrid is putting his body through that and trying so hard. Enkrid holds his sword vertically in both hands, preparing for another training session, and looks toward Rem, exhausted and sweaty. Rem looks back at Enkrid with a neutral, calm expression, then stands by a tent as Enkrid continues his sword training, asking if a knight is just someone who fights well, and if that really has that much meaning to him. Enkrid's lower face is shown in close-up as he listens, while Rem stands looking down at his axe, holding it with both hands, and Enkrid holds his sword directly in front of his face, staring intensely. Rem looks toward Enkrid with a thoughtful, downward gaze, pondering the concepts of honor and merit. He then looks up with his eyes closed, reflecting on Enkrid's words, wondering if that's so, and concluding that strength is just a tool. Close-up of Enkrid's back shows him resting his sword over his shoulder, thinking about what a knight is, or rather, what a sword is, and what he truly wants. He watches his boots walking on the grass, deciding he won't know until he walks the path himself. Enkrid stands in the field with his sword resting on his shoulder, turning to face Rem, looking directly at him with a calm, focused expression, and asks him, "Do you want to learn the sword?" Rem looks up in surprise at Enkrid's unexpected question. Enkrid, holding a sword, seen from a low angle behind another soldier, our determined trainee gazes intently at someone off-panel, as a blonde-haired soldier looks at Enkrid, asking, "Do you want to learn the sword?" Enkrid listens, looking slightly annoyed or skeptical at the unexpected question, and the blonde-haired soldier then stands facing him in a training field, causing Enkrid to react with a surprised gasp. A weary mentor drinks from a canteen, looking exhausted and admitting he shouldn't have said that, feeling lazy already. He continues looking at the sky while drinking, still considering the situation, as Enkrid stares at the soldier with a stoic expression, thinking about the look on his face. The blonde soldier leans on a large sword and talks to Enkrid, offering to teach him the heart of the beast, admitting this might be interesting. The grizzled instructor gestures with his hand, and Enkrid looks up, asking if he's even talking about the Valen mercenary sword technique. Soldier leans on his sword, advising Enkrid that he will revert back to his old habits, telling him to either ditch everything and start fresh or just be complacent. Our tireless trainee firmly states, "I'll start fresh." A close-up on Enkrid's closed eyes shows his internal focus. Then he looks up at the standing blonde soldier, who reiterates the lesson. Enkrid looks up at the standing blonde soldier with a stoic expression, ready to begin. The blonde soldier leans on his sword, thinking about how this guy really. He leans on his sword as Enkrid holds it, asking if he should be handing his sword over like that, observing that our new student isn't normal. Close-up of Enkrid's hand gripping the sword hilt shows his determination, and the blonde soldier watches Enkrid, advising him to keep his grip firm on the sword. Enkrid makes an annoyed expression, clearly frustrated by the lecture. Then our determined trainee stands ready with the sword, preparing to engage, and the blonde soldier swings his weapon toward Enkrid. Enkrid parries the blonde soldier's attack with his own sword, grimacing from the force of the clash. The blonde soldier maintains pressure on Enkrid during their sparring, pushing him hard. The blonde soldier looks down at Enkrid, who observes the soldier during their training spar, wondering what that metaphor even means. Close-up of Enkrid's focused expression and hands on the sword shows him interpreting. Is the soldier saying he's too stiff because he's clenching the sword too tightly, that he probably means he needs to stay flexible to keep his sword from breaking, and that his movements need to be more malleable? Enkrid lunges forward in a combat maneuver, trying to apply the lesson, moving dynamically in combat, but the soldier points out that Enkrid risks breaking his wrist. Our persistent corporal looks up, appearing winded and intensely focused, as the soldier mocks his clumsy movements. Enkrid has fallen to the ground, completely outmatched, while his sparring partner stands over him. The blonde sparring partner looks down at Enkrid, critiquing his performance, admitting he didn't know it was this bad, and that Enkrid doesn't have any of the basics down. He adds that this isn't something that can even be taught, but Enkrid has his head bowed, breathing heavily in exhaustion, then grips his sword hilt firmly, preparing to rise. He stands up and faces the blonde soldier, his determination unwavering. The blonde soldier stares intently at Enkrid, seeing his resolve, and Enkrid looks up with a determined expression, holding his sword. The blonde soldier adjusts his sword grip calmly, then holds his sword ready for the next round of their intense training. They engage in another clash, when suddenly Rem, holding his axe, watches the spar with interest, then approaches the blonde soldier and Enkrid, resting his axe on the blonde soldier's shoulder, offering to take over. Enkrid stares back at them with a serious look, asking Rem about his formal attire. Rem looks down with a calm expression, axe on his shoulder, as the blonde soldier tells Enkrid, who is adjusting his armor gear, that the enemy forces are gathering in the distance. A large army stands on a hillside with banners raised under a blue sky, and a group of soldiers, including Enkrid and his squadmates, stand in formation, preparing for battle. The blonde soldier speaks to another soldier about training Enkrid, wondering if teaching him the sword was a mistake, as he's still new to this technique and probably can't fight all that well. He thinks that our struggling swordsman might die today because of that, and looks toward another soldier with a concerned expression, admitting Enkrid is going to need some babysitting. Close-up of Enkrid looking forward with a serious expression shows him noticing something peculiar. A spear with dark, shadowy wisps rising from it suddenly appears against the sky, heralding danger. A large army stands on a field as mysterious dark mist rolls in, covering the battlefield. Mysterious hooded figure looks toward the camera with a wide-eyed gaze, clearly behind the new threat. Soldiers stand in formation as the thick fog obscures their view, and a pale-faced soldier looks concerned as the environment dims around them. Soldiers with shields begin advancing through the thick fog, blindly pushing forward. Our fog-bound corporal looks around, sweating, as the unnatural fog surrounds him, realizing it's come out of nowhere, and moves through the thick mist with his sword on his back, barely able to see the people next to him. Soldiers around him are confused, asking what's with this fog and why they can't see a thing. Enkrid looks around intensely, with a focused, alert expression while surrounded by the swirling mist. Naurilia's soldiers in formation look around, confused by the sudden appearance of heavy fog, wondering if they heard something. Soldiers look up in alarm as the mysterious noise continues in the fog, asking what's going on. Enkrid shouts a warning to his squadmates as he realizes the danger. ARROWS! A volley of arrows suddenly rains down onto the Naurilia soldiers marching in the mist, striking them and causing chaos in their ranks. An ally with pointed ears reacts with shock to the magical tactical trap, realizing this isn't normal fog and nobody could have expected them to use this tactic. Close-up of the soldier shows him realizing they've been had. The enemy mage looks down from a distance, laughing at the chaos below. The enemy mage explains the ritual process required for the spell, boasting about how difficult it was to get it together, needing to offer up blood, collect clean water, and constantly cast rain spells. The mage observes the Naurilia soldiers trapped in the fog from afar, explaining that once active, the fog obscures all vision unless you're under the casting point of the spell, the flags, making it a one-sided battle. Ritual flags flutter in the wind, maintaining the magical fog, which the mage proudly calls the fog of annihilation. But then Enkrid talks to the enemy mage. He closes the distance, appearing from the dense fog like a hunting phantom, admitting, "Of course, I barely managed to make this work." Our determined swordsman stares at the mage with grim determination, ready to make him regret his ambush. The battlefield rages with arrows raining down, as our stubborn corporal finds himself disoriented in a storm of incoming fire, trying to pinpoint his target through the chaos. Then he hears a familiar voice, an angry outburst from Rem, but the fight's intensity leaves him stiff, unable to properly see his opponent, making him feel like he can't fight or use anything Ragna taught him. He maneuvers his sword, but his legs feel like lead, his breath growing strained and his body getting stiff, with his legs refusing to move, preventing him from utilizing any of Ragna's training. Flashes back to Rem's brutal assessment of combat, telling him he'll revert back to his old habits for now, even if he learns from him, and that you'll die unless you fight on the battlefield. Our resurrecting swordsman acknowledges this harsh reality, focusing intently on the concept of death. He engages in a fast-paced sword fight, clashing blades with his opponent, even as he remembers Rem standing close during that training. If he can't master it in one try, he's stabbed directly in the throat by an enemy soldier, and as his vision darkens, he thinks with brutal clarity about his own lethal strike. With this grim end, our blade master resets, knowing he'll go back to learning from Ragna. Another death, another reset. But now he's back in training, facing off with Ragna, who struggles to put into words what Enkrid needs to improve, crouching in a defensive position with his sword. Because to a genius like Ragna, it's also obvious that it's hard for him to explain what's wrong. The quick learner realizes Ragna isn't making fun of him, but is genuinely confused. Ragna can only ask about the center of gravity. As he demonstrates a simple training movement, our determined hero narrows his eyes in deep concentration, deflecting an arrow with his sword as it rains down in the training simulation. Notes internally that he's still too stiff, looking up at an incoming spear, but calmly accepts his fate, thinking, "It's okay. I can die and continue learning." He falls to the ground after countless strikes, receiving another blow during training, but continues to swing his sword, drill after drill. Eventually, Ragna observes him with a serious expression, complimenting that the step he just took is pretty good. Our stubborn corporal focuses intently, internalizing the feedback, as Ragna then instructs him on the 3 basic sword attacks: cutting, stabbing, and slashing, and how to use the blade's edge for defense. Ragna lunges toward him, but Enkrid dodges the strike with intense speed, then deflects an incoming training spear. Our blade master parries an attack, focusing intently on the movement of the sword, finding his feet becoming lighter, and he can dodge his opponent easily. Multiple spears fly past his face in the chaotic simulation, but then several strike him at once, resetting the moment. Little by little, his today starts to change, until his opponent stares in disbelief, asking, "What? Did you just parry? You tracked my sword." Only a little bit at a time, our resurrecting swordsman performs a clean diagonal slash with his blade during the training session. His opponent watches, surprised, declaring that diagonal slash needs no more work. But those little bits add up, and our determined hero smiles confidently while continuing the intense sparring match. His sword swings are a blur, and he clashes blades with his opponent, demonstrating his improved combat skill. Enkrid swings his sword with precise, aggressive force during the session, while his opponent reacts with shock and sweat on his face, witnessing our quick learner's progress, his eye widening in disbelief. His opponent stares intently, analyzing Enkrid's performance, as Enkrid, sweating and worn, grips his sword in concentration. His intense, focused eye analyzes every movement, and Ragna no longer looks at him the same way. Ragna calls out, astonished that he thought he couldn't improve much more with his own talent. Enkrid performs a rapid, forceful movement during his intense combat session, having surpassed his previous level, and he avoids a spear strike with absolute clarity and determination. Our stubborn corporal lunges forward with extreme speed to counter his opponent's attack, grinning with manic intensity. He narrowly avoids another spear strike, but then he's struck by a spear, causing him to cough up blood, the spear tip piercing through armor and into flesh. Enkrid's face, bloodied and distorted in a manic smile, declares, "It's so fun that I could go insane. This is fun." The road to becoming a knight is filled with such brutal, joyful repetition, constantly asking, "Do you want to learn the sword?" An older soldier watches Enkrid prepare to train, then asks him pointedly, "Do you want to learn the sword?" Our veteran regressor looks up with a determined expression, ready for whatever critique comes next. The soldier scratches his ear, a sign of frustration. He bluntly critiques Enkrid's technique. "Like shit, no, that's not it," he says. Enkrid focuses intensely, internalizing the correction. Back on the chaotic battlefield, arrows rain down, and soldiers with shields brace against the volley. Enkrid watches an incoming arrow fall, having lived this moment over 200 times now. He steps forward on the dusty battlefield, confident in his honed skills. He dodges a lethal attack with ease, flowing past it like water, his eyes determined as he thinks about how far he will go. The techniques he learned will take him. He looks up at an enemy attacking from above, as a knight swings his weapon down, but Enkrid slashes him with a fluid motion on the foggy battlefield. Our relentless corporal strikes another enemy, maneuvering through the fog, knowing he can get a few of them because he knows where the enemies will pop out from beyond the mist. He knows he can get them, even without seeing them. A shocked enemy soldier looks around in confusion, realizing he was hit by an unseen foe. Another stands alert in the fog, searching for his attacker. He mutters in confusion, baffled that nobody is here. But Enkrid lands a swift sword strike, proving him wrong. An enemy soldier reacts with alarm, shouting about what is going on. Crossbowman looks down in fear, shouting a warning to watch out below. Character with braided hair watches the battle unfold. Enkrid focuses intently, explaining his method. "Look with your eyes, predict, move with your feet." As he swiftly cuts through another enemy, he shouts with a fierce expression that it's different, and to finish with his hands. He swings his blade, reflecting on how completely different it feels compared to when he didn't have the basics down. An enemy soldier is struck by his weapon in the swirling fog. Enkrid thinks he wants more, lunging toward the remaining enemies like a released spring, shouting, "Come ATME," his sword ready to strike at enemies wielding crossbows. He faces down two heavily armored Aspen soldiers, unafraid. One glares, aiming his crossbow, and asks, "But do you think you'll make it out alive?" Enkrid stands in a defensive stance, breathing heavily from the exertion. He prepares to lunge again, thinking he wants to. He wants to keep testing himself. An Aspen soldier readies his crossbow, startled by our corporal's sudden confrontation. Dark, swift motion blurs across the screen, indicating a lethal attack. Enkrid is struck through the chest by multiple projectiles, falling once more. A ripple effect marks his moment of death and resurrection. He kneels on the ground, having just respawned, as a voice from the battle taunts him, saying he has walked into his own grave. A close-up shows his face at the moment of death during a reset. Enkrid wakes up in his bed, exhausted and reflective after his latest death. He sits contemplating the strange occurrence. An enemy came out of nowhere just to curse him out. Rem, shirtless, looks at him, asking what he is doing, just blanking out. Enkrid turns to his squadmate, beginning to explain about this particular enemy. He recounts how some enemy called out the spell whenever it happened. A large army stands in formation outside, black banners fluttering in the wind. Enkrid asks Rem why, wondering if he knows anything about spells. Rem, still shirtless, listens intently to Enkrid's questions. He agrees, then asks Enkrid if he knows the difference between magic and spells. The corporal who defies death crosses his arms, listening closely. Rem explains that a spell requires a medium. Enkrid realizes the importance of a medium, his expression serious. He connects the dots. The fog was due to the enemy's spell, and the tattered black flag was the medium. Enkrid considers that spells originated from the west, and Rem is from the western frontier, meaning if the flag breaks, the fog will disperse. Rem confirms he has seen it, with a slight smile. Rem places a hand on Enkrid's shoulder, solidifying their mutual understanding. Enkrid looks into the distance, deep in thought about this revelation. Rem and Enkrid stand outdoors, Rem noting that luckily, they seem to have the same training background. Rem shares a past anecdote, speaking from a close-up profile. About 500 years ago, he explains, there was a 1 in a million prodigy, a silhouette of a man placing his hands on a young child's shoulders. The story continues, a person holding a sword in front of their face, partially obscured. This prodigy began losing strength at 10 years old, was also cursed, and became fully paralyzed by the age of 12. Rem looks down, lost in thought, explaining that just like that, the Mist Rune's prodigy was lost to history. Enkrid looks ahead with a serious expression, processing the story. Knights in uniform are shown sitting on a throne, with Rem narrating that Leonesis rewrote the history of the sword. And with this, the Oni axe became the greatest house in the empire. Rem continues, reiterating that the prodigy began losing strength at 10. Enkrid realizes what he's talking about, saying it must be the heart of the beast. Rem confirms that the prodigy became fully paralyzed at the age of 12. Suddenly, Rem is training with his sword against Enkrid, who stands ready. A close-up on Enkrid's face shows his shock. He exclaims in surprise. Enkrid parries an incoming strike, barely reacting in time. A close-up on Enkrid's neck reveals a bleeding wound. He clutches his neck after a near-fatal strike from Rem, realizing it was a strike faster than Rem's axe. Enkrid stands away from Rem, looking at the result of the duel. Rem stands casually with his axe on his shoulder, observing Enkrid. He dryly states that he is just helping Enkrid out. Rem points his finger, asking if Enkrid wants a taste of his axe, and casually mentioning both Enkrid's teachers are pretty shit. Side profile of Enkrid shows him listening intently. Rem holds his axe, speaking to Enkrid, who stands behind him. A close-up on Enkrid's face shows the fresh wound on his neck. The focused swordsman realizes that this technique is similar to the heart of the beast, yet completely different. He needs more experience to recalibrate, noting that while the heart of the beast makes you numb in the face of death, concentrating on a single point makes you more alert. An extreme close-up on Enkrid's eyes shows him looking at a black flag, realizing this is the medium for the spell. A soldier runs through the foggy battlefield. Soldiers react in confusion to the fog, as Enkrid knows he needs to get rid of this spell for them to escape this slaughter. He died so many times, stabbed in the neck by an enemy, that our resurrecting swordsman has learned to train his ears against assassins, saying he trains them to survive assassins. He even parries lethal strikes from knights, learning the heart of the beast to survive the battlefield. But now our stubborn corporal is focusing on a single point, stopping his blade just short of the target. Ragna watches him train, but Enkrid is troubled, wondering if the boldness from his heart of the beast skill is interfering with this. Ragna suggests he should feel everything else fade besides the opponent's sword, making our focused fighter realize that channeling his fear of death might not be the right move for this particular skill. Disappointed, Enkrid understands he won't get any useful answers from Ragna and will just have to figure it out on his own. Though he continues practicing concentrating on a single point on the battlefield, minimizing damage to his allies and penetrating enemy lines with sudden, shocking strikes. He yells as he swings his sword, pushing through soldiers who crouch defensively. Our focused fighter holds his shield high against a dense downpour of arrows, moving through the barrage like a human battering ram, deflecting them with ease. He maintains his guard, focusing on his internal senses, claiming he knows where the attacks will come from even with his eyes closed, after repeating, "Today 300 times. Then he makes a sudden, precise strike at an enemy soldier who barely has time to react. He lands a lethal blow, swiftly defeating opponent after opponent. Enemy soldiers panic, seeing him dominate the battlefield. Enkrid's overwhelming force throws them back, and he pivots with his sword, engaging another foe, delivering a powerful, decisive strike. An enemy soldier shouts orders for his comrades to get a hold of themselves, but our stubborn corporal lunges fiercely toward them. His sword clashes, creating sparks, knocking another soldier back. He deflects a spear, maintaining his dominance, and then has an intense realization. Finally, the flag. But after destroying it, he's confused why the fog still hasn't dissipated. He's struck by a blade in the thick fog, and an enemy soldier looms over him, preparing to finish him off. As a spear pierces him, an enemy reveals the truth. There's only one real flag, the other 5 AREDECOYS. He sees the multiple enemy flags across the battlefield, complicating his mission while his squadmates call out to him. Enkrid attempts to dodge and maneuver defensively, holding his shield against advancing enemies. He shouts commands, his expression twisted with determination, confusing soldiers in the fog. But then he's hit by a hail of arrows, taking a hit as he desperately tries to block the barrage. A resurrecting swordsman and his allies fall under the relentless assault. He contemplates his failure and timing in this latest death loop, wondering why they couldn't listen like last time, concluding he needs to give them time to catch their breath. He maneuvers defensively, dodging spears, only to be struck in the head by another spear. He kneels, pierced by multiple spears from all sides. From an aerial view, he notes that only 2 more decoy flags are left, staring intensely as he tries to discern which one is real. Spears rain down on the formation, a close-up showing one flying through the air. Soldiers move through the foggy battlefield as spears fly overhead, with Enkrid and his comrades advancing, shields raised, as he admits he can't see in front of him. He ducks behind his shield to deflect more projectiles, as a volley of arrows rains down on his line of soldiers. Suddenly, Rem leaps over Enkrid, who remains crouched, looking at our soldier who won't stay dead in astonishment, yelling, "You out of your mind!" Both Enkrid and our brutish axe-wielder rush toward the enemy, with Enkrid yelling at the enemy. Rem performs a powerful sweeping strike with his axe, knocking a soldier into the air like a bowling ball hitting pins. Enkrid then looks up in shock, holding his axe, and questions who cast the magical spell. Our focused fighter looms over a fallen enemy, striking with his sword in a dynamic motion as soldiers scream that he's a monster. He runs forward like a predator closing in on its prey, sword in hand, readying it for a final strike, proclaiming, "But now it's the end." He lunges through the heavy fog, aiming for victory. An enemy soldier attacks our stubborn corporal, unleashing a powerful, sweeping sword strike, and they even taunt him with a warning. But Enkrid blocks the blow with ease, stepping in to counter, and then quickly dodging a follow-up strike, like a spring recoiling, leaving his opponent genuinely shocked at his precision. The enemy can't believe it, wondering if this is really the guy they saw before because he's gotten incomparably better, and now our focused fighter looks to catch them with a single step. But as their blades clash in close quarters, Enkrid deflects a heavy blow with precision, employing a righteous sword technique that's loyal to the basics, and mixing in a flowing sword technique which deflects attacks, forcing his opponent to defend, and now Enkrid grinds his teeth in an intense struggle. As sparks fly from their desperate sword lock, our stubborn corporal realizes he needs to focus all of his senses in front of him. He needs to pour everything he has into the moment, because if he gets distracted for a single moment, the balance will collapse. So he tells himself to forget the flag. Enkrid and his opponent prepare to deliver final, decisive blows, and with his eyes closed for a split second to sharpen his concentration, our focused fighter delivers a powerful strike, catching his enemy off guard and forcing them back, continuing his aggressive assault. But then Enkrid is suddenly struck, a blade piercing through his chest and ending the fight abruptly. And as he collapses, coughing, his intense blue eye shows a flash of insight, even in death. Another soldier spots Mitch Hurrier, asking if he was blocking the flagpole on the grass. And then the platoon commander looms over our kneeling, wounded hero, observing that he looks wistful. But as he stares down at a smiling, bloodied Enkrid, the commander demands, "What's with you? Why are you smiling?" Our blood-stained corporal, still smiling, internally realizes that it wasn't the concentration that comes from the fear of a dying moment that was necessary, but rather facing an opponent who would put his everything on the line, making the platoon commander stare down at him and wonder if he's just a crazy bastard. Violent sword strike flashes, and Enkrid mentally replays a memory of himself standing focused, ready for training, acknowledging the advice to concentrate on a single point, while our axe-wielding ally, Rem, watches him with a serious expression, and our soldier who won't stay dead gazes upward with a determined, slight smile. Rem looks away, noting that Enkrid actually looks more full of energy, concluding he's a weird person. And then our hot-headed warrior looks toward the viewer with a calm, focused expression. In the heat of the next loop, an enemy combatant reacts in shock, screaming, as Enkrid crouches behind his shield, advancing forward through a hail of projectiles. Rem sees Enkrid charging forward like a battering ram, and after yelling, "Huh, what the F are you doing?" quickly decides to follow, telling him he'll go with him, while also asking our stubborn corporal, "What's with you? Did you take an arrow to the head?" The soldiers engage in an intense close-quarters skirmish with enemies, with Rem swinging his large axe with immense force and Enkrid aggressively swinging his sword, continuing the assault. Once more, our resurrecting swordsman opens the path in a similar way from before, and meets Mitch Hurrier on the battlefield, looking up with an intense, focused expression. Mitch Hurrier, condescending as ever, asks our hero, "Why? First time receiving a confession, I came because I fell in love at first sight," then taunting him by saying it's the first time someone has come looking for him, asking if he's upset. Mitch Hurrier lunges, but Enkrid parries a blow, re-entering the state of concentration where he can only feel the sword, before Mitch stands victoriously over him again. As Enkrid's eyes narrow, he reflects that his attitude was wrong, because concentration can't be intentional. He needs to be absorbed into the fight naturally, so he will repeat it and find it. Our determined soldier lunges toward Mitch, taking a precise stance, and he lunges forward with his sword held out in front of him, seeing the image again, the 28th time, then the 48th time as he spars, staring intensely as a sword strike passes close by him, his eye focused and intense. A regressing corporal, Enkrid, stands tall on the open battlefield, gripping his sword, his gaze intense and fixed on the horizon. Before the chaos, a female soldier had warned him about the enemy's spells, recalling that she'd seen them during reconnaissance. Now, a thick, obscuring fog rolls in, turning the battlefield into a confused, low-visibility skirmish, with arrows raining down, forcing soldiers to huddle behind their shields, and Enkrid slides low across the ground during combat, knowing his hopes for competent commanders won't save them. He just has to hope their commanders are competent, but what he really has to do is overcome the challenge right in front of him. Our time-looping swordsman looks directly at his opponent under a large banner, resolved to face this guy head-on. He walks toward the knight in the misty battlefield, who addresses him by name, Mitch Hurrier. Enkrid grips his weapon tightly, acknowledging the name before lunging forward with a powerful swing. They engage in a fast-paced sword fight, Mitch holding his hilt firmly, while Enkrid focuses intently, ready for anything, and their blades clash violently in the mist. As Mitch prepares another swing, Enkrid braces, thinking, "This bastard," as their blades grind and spark, then separate, only to crash together again with significant force. When Mitch asks his name, Enkrid looks up with a determined gaze and simply replies, "Enkrid." Then he launches a powerful downward strike, their blades meeting with a loud impact, and Mitch smirks, promising to remember that name. Our persistent fighter's eyes widen with intense focus, perceiving every nuance of the combat, as Mitch shifts his grip, preparing his next move. Enkrid observes the knight's legs, noticing his balance shifts to his right foot, realizing he's preparing to slash diagonally, and the blade moves in a blur through the air. He reflects on the technique he's learned from countless today's, and the experience he's gained through repetition, all culminating to allow him to see every single one of Mitch's movements. Mitch swings his sword in a powerful attack, his hands gripping the hilt firmly, but Enkrid stands firm, blocking the incoming strike, their blades locked in a struggle. Despite the pain, he attempts to dodge or deflect the powerful attack, contorting his body like a gymnast to avoid the full impact, his face showing intense concentration, gritting his teeth and refusing to accept defeat. He analyzes his own fighting style, realizing his righteous and flowing sword techniques are suited for parrying, but he needs a proper attack, and his ultimate technique to remedy that is one he's learned, an attack that starts from the bottom and slashes everything in a huge arc. He calls it the wheel cut, and his eye shows intense clarity and focus. Enkrid successfully parries Mitch's powerful sword attack, seeing it and understanding its origin, then swings his sword with full momentum to execute his counterattack. He smiles confidently as he lands his strike, welcoming Mitch. Their blades clash, creating a massive spark, and Mitch reacts with shock, unable to believe that Enkrid saw it and parried. Enkrid's eyes are wide and focused, reflecting his intense concentration during the fight. We flash back to a cloaked warrior, representing House Hurrier, which represented the brute force of the kingdom, and Enkrid remembers how he once fought 2 adult knights at age 15, one against a champion swordsman of a town at 18, and became one of the 3 best fighters in the Greyhounds through skill alone. He had become one of the 3 best fighters in the Greyhounds through skill alone. He watches a soldier training on the ground, remembering his younger self asking why people train until their thighs are sore, or why it's necessary to swing a sword until your hand bleeds. Enkrid stands tall over the defeated soldier, with a focused, slightly surprised expression, recalling he used to think it only took a few swings to get it. He was satisfied with the present, emboldened by his skill, which was a mistake on his part. He flashes back to himself grappling with an opponent, his sword driven into their chest, then striking again from above, finishing the fight, leaving his opponent gasping for air, fatally wounded. But in the present, Enkrid winces in pain as he takes a hit during combat, staggering back like a boxer after a heavy blow. Standing weary and bloodied, breathing heavily, clearly exhausted, realizing he underestimated Mitch. He thought that attack would definitely get him, but it didn't, and he grits his teeth in frustration, blocking another sword strike. He grips his sword tightly, preparing to counterattack, thinking, if only I had tried harder instead of being complacent. Mitch's allies rush in, shouting to protect him, as Enkrid jumps and strikes while an opponent dodges, and an injured soldier is supported by another. A soldier collapses to the ground in defeat, while Enkrid stands ready, sword pointed towards his opponent, who stares back with a hardened, masked expression. A persistent fighter stares intensely with focused, piercing blue eyes. Enemy soldiers aim their crossbows, as Mitch remains in a defensive stance, a tattered flag flying on a pole in the background. Enkrid, looking battle-worn, stands against a stone wall, his focused blue eyes reflecting that Mitch Hurrier is the wall he has to overcome today. An armored soldier shouts, "Fire!" as Enkrid deflects incoming arrows with his sword, another arrow flying through the chaotic air. A battered corporal Enkrid faces an Aspen soldier in a chaotic skirmish, dodging incoming spear attacks, knowing he can't avoid every single one, so he'll take the hits and keep advancing. An Aspen soldier grunts, swinging his weapon, and Enkrid barely parries the attack, his sword already cracking from the sheer weight of the enemy's technique. He stares intensely as his sword takes impact, realizing how heavy the sword technique is. And while he knows he's going to need to die many more times to win this battle, his immediate objective is to win this specific fight and destroy the enemy flag. He knows the flag is a spell medium, and even slight damage will stop it, but his dagger just passes through if he aims for the flag directly. Fighting the Aspen soldier, Enkrid realizes he has to aim for the connection between the flag and the flagpole. He prepares to strike, aiming directly for the connection point. His sword strikes the enemy flagpole, destroying the spell medium. Then Enkrid runs across the battlefield. In a quick flashback, our tactical swordsman battles soldiers on the field, remembering he informed command about the spell and asked for resources to combat it, but they haven't done anything. He impales an enemy soldier, thinking this kingdom is rotten for sending a sprouted potato of a man to command the front lines, which at this rate will get them all wiped out. Back in the present, a close-up on Enkrid's face shows him fighting, as Aspen soldiers react with confusion to the sudden dissipation of the magical fog. An enemy soldier looks back in confusion, wondering what happened to the flag, and Enkrid strikes another enemy soldier in the chest. He shouts with resolve, realizing that with the fog gone, the enemies are completely taken by surprise, and now's their chance to change the tide of the battle as Naurilian soldiers charge forward in a mass assault. A resilient fighter moves across the battlefield, his expression focused, wondering who destroyed the spell that created the fog. He thinks intently, crouching and breathing hard after combat, arrows stuck in his gear, wondering if it was that squad leader. Then with regret, he realizes he messed up. He walks through the battlefield, looking for his missing squad mates, thinking he'd run into either Rem or Ragna if he retreated towards friendly lines. but they're nowhere to be found. Suddenly, Rem, the axe-wielder, is spotted standing over a pile of defeated soldiers in the tall grass. Close-up on Rem's face shows him glaring at an opponent, while Ragna the swordsman stands ready in a fighting stance, surrounded by enemy soldiers. Ragna shouts in frustration, facing off against enemy soldiers, demanding, "What the F is wrong with you? Do you want to be executed?" Enkrid faces off against an enemy soldier, calling him a goddamn bastard, and parries his attack. Unexpectedly, a panther attacks an enemy soldier, pinning him down, and Enkrid looks on in surprise, realizing this is the puma he saw at the tall grass fields. An enemy soldier yells in terror, asking what the hell that beast is, as the panther lunges towards another soldier, and enemy soldiers are knocked back in a chaotic skirmish. An enemy soldier looks on in shock, holding his crossbow, while Enkrid stands next to the panther on the battlefield. He scans the battlefield with a concerned expression as a scarred soldier approaches him, telling him to stand back, that he'll save him. As the soldier approaches, Enkrid recognizes him as platoon leader Vengeance. Vengeance engages in combat, his sword drawn, deflecting an attack, causing sparks to fly. Enkrid and the panther watch the soldier as he leads a squad of crossbowmen in a charge, striking a powerful blow during combat. The panther leaps at the soldier during the heat of battle, and a blade strikes at a target. Our tactical swordsman and the Black Panther dodge a sword strike. Enkrid's focused, intense eye looking for a weakness. Soldier in plate armor swings his sword down towards Enkrid, and Enkrid realizes he has spotted an opening in his opponent's technique. He sees it and blocks a heavy sword strike. He struggles to parry a powerful overhead strike, realizing he can't parry that sword with his strength. And as their swords clash and create bright sparks, he decides he'll have to let it flow, like Mitch Hurrier did. Enkrid's blade slides along the opponent's weapon during their clash, and the armored soldier looks shocked by Enkrid's sudden change in combat style. The soldier stares at Enkrid in disbelief, recognizing Mitch Hurrier's technique. Enkrid looks up with a sharp, determined gaze during the fight, as an ally soldier rushes in to strike the armored opponent. The armored soldier looks around as his squad charges into the battlefield, glaring intensely at Enkrid, then turns his head away. Enkrid stares forward with intense resolve, acknowledging the shift, as if saying, "As you wish." The armored soldier signals his squad to advance, and Enkrid kneels on the ground with the panther, knowing they have to bring the puma too. An ally helps Enkrid carry the panther away from the battlefield, as soldiers retreat on a smoky battlefield, shouting, "Third platoon, to the rear, we're retreating." Enkrid lies injured, his eyes drooping as an ally struggles to keep him conscious, imploring him not to close his eyes. Stubborn corporal keeps dying and resetting, which must be driving someone insane, because he wakes up in bed, bandaged from head to toe, with Esther curled up on his chest, while his worried squadmates wonder which bastard did this to him. They really thought our resurrecting swordsman was a goner this time, and one even praises the gods that he's alive, but all Enkrid can say is, "I'm thirsty." He tries to drink but spills the water, still too weak to hold the cup properly. And as he pets Esther, he recalls that he must have passed out during the retreat. Later that day, our injured corporal tries to get some sleep, just happy to have made it through another day. He offers for Rem to pet Esther, but our axe-wielding friend says he's not interested in beasts, and then gives Enkrid a serious look, which Enkrid silently returns. Our squad leader tries to clarify that Esther is a person, but Rem just gives him a long, silent stare. Enkrid, shirtless and bandaged, looks contemplative, while Rem warns him not to get too interested in spells himself. Enkrid, trying to change the subject, asks Rem what he was doing during the battle anyway. Rem grins as he recounts how he sent an enemy's head flying because, "I didn't like his face." Ragna, meanwhile, leans in, trying to touch Esther's little paws, but the panther hisses, eyes glowing, making it clear she does not appreciate the gesture. Ragna then bemoans having to give up 10,000 krona for magical energy stones. Enkrid explains that these stones are supposed to hold the energy of the land, and calculates that 10,000 krona is a full gold coin. While a soldier trains nearby with a glowing sword, a medic warns Enkrid not to move too much if he wants to heal, but our determined fighter insists he's fine. He performs some stretches on his cot, proving his point, much to the surprise of two observing soldiers. Rem and Ragna approach him, and Ragna asks a question regarding the sword. Enkrid listens intently. Rem explains a new technique, sensing the enemy's heart to anticipate their actions, which Ragna thinks should be easier since Enkrid already knows the basics. But Rem adds that, for most at Enkrid's level, it would take hundreds of real battles to master. Enkrid skeptically asks, "Is that so?" He clenches his bandaged arm into a fist and declares his resolve to get even stronger. Enkrid then calls out to Rem and Ragna, looking directly at the viewer with an intense gaze, as Ragna, holding his sword, admits it's rare for him to agree with Rem. Just then, a noble female knight, the company commander, enters the tent. She immediately demands to know who broke the spell. Enkrid, surprised by her personal inquiry, admits, "Yes, it was me." She presses him, asking how he found the real decoy among 5 fakes. He listens carefully to his answer, then adds a cryptic, "I also came to see your face." Our squad leader stares back with a sharp, suspicious look, while the company commander looks into the distance, pondering fate. Rem and Ragna, standing by the tent exit, wonder what she means by fate. Rem smiles, acknowledging that Enkrid was indeed skilled enough to pull it off, and a nearby soldier gives Enkrid a thumbs up, promising favorable terms for his actions. Enkrid's face is intense and suspicious after the encounter, as a red-cloaked soldier walks through a field of banners, while the company commander discusses the ranks of squires and proto-knights. She explains how squires become proto-knights, far above them. Enkrid, looking down thoughtfully, realizes that this squire is probably about to be promoted. Rem and Ragna tell Enkrid to get some rest as they head off to battle. But Enkrid, with intense purple eyes, says, "I want to see him." Rem pauses, looking at Enkrid, then smiles, deciding it can't be helped. Soon, a vast army stands in formation under the sunset, and Enkrid, with his squad, stands ready in front of them. Our determined fighter's wide purple eyes are intensely focused on the approaching battle. A small armored figure in a cape walks toward the massive enemy army, a lone knight standing on a barren landscape, facing impossible odds. Soldiers aim their bows at the distant figure, and the Naurilian archers draw back their bowstrings, preparing to fire. Enkrid, now in plate armor and a red cape, stands on the battlefield. A commander shouts the order to fire, and a dense volley of arrows streaks through the sky. As Enkrid looks up at a massive, dark cloud of death raining down upon him, he watches the sky intently, bracing for impact, then moves with supernatural agility, leaping across the terrain like a thrown stone skipping over water. His boot impacts the ground with immense force, like a small meteor creating a shockwave. A nearby soldier notes that he used his determination ability on his legs, and Enkrid executes a rapid maneuver, using superhuman speed to deflect or dodge the incoming arrows as if they were moving in slow motion. Arrows strike the ground around him, shattering against an invisible defensive aura, and our determined fighter leaps forward, charging toward the line of enemy archers. A red-caped warrior plunges into combat, a whirlwind of blades and plate armor against the Aspen soldiers. He moves with intense focus, surrounded by the chaos of the battlefield, leaving enemy soldiers screaming in terror and confusion. Enkrid swings his sword, cutting down several soldiers in a wide arc, and continues his spinning strike, decimating enemy lines. The Aspen forces panic, shouting for retreat, completely overwhelmed by his assault, as one soldier on horseback screams in terror, before our determined blade decapitates him mid-charge. Enkrid strikes another mounted enemy soldier from above, delivering a lethal blow from his horse. His eyes, sharp and focused, observe the flow of battle, and Rem, watching him, declares, "That guy's not bad. He isn't called the war specialist for no reason." Ragna analyzes the combat, believing he can reach that level of skill, while Sinar critiques the enemy commander as a fool for wasting at least 5 opportunities to stop Enkrid. Audin, meanwhile, stands behind his subordinate, offering a quiet prayer. Enkrid, concentrating, notices that the squire's sword technique isn't just one style, but contains elements of both the heavy and swift sword forms. A schematic training diagram of a sword thrust highlights the complex moves he's seeing. As Enkrid parries an enemy attack, sparks flying from the blade. He leaps and strikes downward in a fluid, high-speed motion, executing a swift, wide-arcing swing that creates visible motion lines. This fast sword technique overwhelms enemies with its sheer speed, and Enkrid observes that the heavy sword and swift sword are usually at odds, yet he sees both in the squire's movements. Takes in the details of the combat, seeing beyond the surface, realizing that if one is to understand the commonality between all 5 sword styles and wield the blade like a living object, they could master everything. His focused blue eyes reflect this epiphany, and he closes them, deepening his concentration. The 444th unit charges, unleashing a loud war cry, with Rem and another squad member watching with serious expressions, Rem even breaking into a confident smile. Other soldiers observe, realizing their squad leader is about to overcome something monumental. Rem, Audin, and the rest of the squad stand together, watching the fight unfold, as Enkrid remains in deep meditative concentration, eyes still closed. Then his blue eyes snap open, radiating pure determination as he stands alone in a dark space, surrounded by a ripple-like glowing energy field. He appears in silhouette against a bright light, ready to fight, and then on a rocky ledge overlooking a dark, water-filled cavern. Enkrid and his squad, the Madmen, stand ready amidst the chaos, but our determined blade is still deep in thought, uttering a single, resolute "I." His bandaged hand grips a rocky surface firmly, and he pulls himself up a sheer cliff face with intense determination. One of his unit delivers a lethal strike to an enemy in battle, as Enkrid continues to climb the steep rock wall, reaching upward. The 444th unit soldiers charge forward in unison, while Enkrid looks on with a calm and focused expression. His hand clenches into a tight fist in front of the sunset sky, and his unit cheers and brandishes their weapons after a successful surge. Enkrid stands tall, surveying the battlefield as the sun sets behind him, the fighting over. Later, a fortress town is nestled in a valley at night, where the Aspen sovereign sits slumped on his throne in distress. He rages, "These bastards! They broke the gentleman's agreement to not bring in any knights." His formal advisor looks down at a document with a concerned expression, as the frustrated sovereign listens to his advisor's derogatory comments about frogs. A scarred soldier in armor listens to his superior, as the Aspen sovereign remains distressed and tense. The scarred soldier looks ahead, predicting this won't end well for Naurilia. Meanwhile, a group of Naurilian soldiers marches back triumphantly through a mountain pass. A commander praises the Naurilia heroes for leading the war to victory, promising rewards. Enkrid listens with a composed expression, standing with his unit. He then walks toward the front of the line, soldiers gathering around, looking down thoughtfully. Two soldiers discuss him, one telling the other to quiet down, the silent soldier staring ahead intently. The unit stands in formation, one soldier looking thoughtfully into the distance. Enkrid holds a bag of money he received, thinking it's so much more than that. He stares at the bag of money, and a soldier asks if he wants recommendations for how to spend it. Enkrid looks up with a calm expression, and another soldier reacts in shock, asking, "You're gonna use all that money to buy a sword?" Enkrid then examines a sword hilt in a weapons storage area, his ultimate goal clear. "To become a knight, I need to prove my strength." Our patient swordsman Enkrid gets ready for a training match, focusing intently on his opponent while a soldier talks some trash, smiling confidently. The betting official opens the wagers, shouting for bets to be placed, and the crowd loudly heckles our hero, with one soldier even making fun of his recent squad achievement. Someone's actually bet on him, but our perpetually dying hero internally notes that while he's only gotten stronger by dying, this fight doesn't have the same stakes, so he still needs to fight like his life is on the line. His first opponent charges aggressively, shouting for the idiot to come, but Enkrid uses a parry technique he learned from a past battle, creating an opening and sending his opponent's sword flying. The opponent screams in pain, "MYFINGRS," as Enkrid quickly drives his sword home and defeats him, leaving the crowd in shock. Our patient swordsman questions why his opponent was so weak, wondering if all duels end this quickly, or if he's just gotten significantly stronger. New opponent, part of the heavy infantry and supposedly the strongest in their battalion, steps up, trying to distract Enkrid by moving the tip of his spear. But our hero easily parries the thrust, breaking the spear, leaving his opponent terrified and striking him down with a kick. The crowd is completely stunned, realizing it's no coincidence that Enkrid has taken down two medium-rank soldiers, while Rem watches with a smug smirk, noting how much stronger he's got. A perpetually dying hero finally realizes the extent of his own growth, remembering past terrifying opponents like the stabbing pervert from his first loop, and the assassin from the next one, when a new opponent tries to mock him for being distracted before their fight. Our strong squad leader dismisses his taunt with a blunt, "No, my ass," then lunges forward, clashing blades with his opponent, who quickly finds himself overwhelmed and defeated. The soldiers cheer wildly for the Spellbreaker, chanting his new nickname as he calmly acknowledges their praise. Just as he's receiving some food, an older, gray-haired man with a golden eagle emblem approaches, known to the crowd as the Border Butcher, and challenges Enkrid to a duel. Our determined swordsman Enkrid accepts the challenge from the Border Butcher, internally noting this opponent might be as strong as Hurrier. He wonders what would happen if he fights someone like him without dying, then calls out, "Come!" The Butcher, surprised by Enkrid's lack of fear against a Special Forces soldier, prepares for the duel as the crowd chants Spellbreaker, ready to see their hero fight. The battle begins in a flash of steel, and the veteran warrior is immediately shocked by Enkrid's incredible concentration and tiny, precise movements. The Butcher attacks with desperate power, but our endlessly persistent hero narrowly avoids, then counters with a thrust that would have been fatal if he hadn't chosen to plant his sword into the ground instead. The intense duel continues, with Enkrid landing a series of decisive, painful blows, clearly overpowering the veteran warrior. Exhausted but victorious, the Spellbreaker stands tall while a mysterious, long-haired figure watches intently from the side. The veteran warrior, acknowledging Enkrid's incredible skill, offers him a handshake, and the crowd erupts in cheers. Amazed he just fought a special-rank soldier, chanting his name. A rising star shakes the Butcher's hand, who says, "I'll see you again soon." And Enkrid feels that with this victory, he's moved one step closer to his ultimate goal. Later in the barracks, Graham, 1st Company commander, stands by as Enkrid discusses multiple transfer requests with an officer, asking if it's because of his rank and role in breaking the spell. The officer offers to send Rem along with him, but a squadmate playfully teases our hero about the constant transfers. Enkrid then meets with a commander, stating his preference for the border guards, as it's a better offer than others, directly under the Crown's command. The commander notes Enkrid wants a harder fight, and that coming to the border guards means something specific. The winter has arrived suddenly, making even a hardened soldier shiver violently, curled up under a thick blanket as our resetting corporal demands hot stones, pragmatically dismissing the man as useless now that the battle is over. Audin then pulls the blanket away despite the man's yells to stop, while the muscular Audin stands tall and unbothered. Our reborn swordsman then walks out of the cabin into the chilly gray morning, contemplating to himself how quickly the cold arrived, almost overnight. Soon, 2 cloaked men approach our battle-hardened veteran in the market with friendly greetings, and one, Bo, gives him a thumbs up. This immediately makes Enkrid suspicious, as he questions if Jack and Bo were part of the scouting mission he recalled. As they walk through the market, Jack praises our corporal, expressing his deep honor to be with him, and Bo adds that his rapid promotion from the lowest rank is amazing, though Enkrid just deflects the praise. As the 3 men huddle together against the cold, Bo notes that this winter feels colder than most. A street vendor shouts about dried fruits in the bustling background, but then a mysterious cloaked figure approaches Enkrid, signaling a sudden stop. A reborn swordsman is ambushed and falls to the ground, like a puppet whose strings are suddenly cut, as a bystander cries out in concern for the fallen man. Enkrid reacts in shock as a cloaked assassin stabs him, driving the blade into his chest while pinning him down, causing him to cough blood and gasp, "What?" in sudden realization. The cloaked conspirators surround him, feigning concern by asking if he's all right. Our resetting corporal then realizes they're deliberately hiding him from the crowd. One of the cloaked men taunts him, asking, "You surprised?" with a sinister smile, confirming they're all working together. A resetting corporal quickly realizes his assailant is a half-fairy, an assassin sent by Aspen for breaking the spell. He's then brutally stabbed again in a quick motion, the blade striking his body. The cloaked conspirators congratulate each other, confident that their mission is successful. As a mysterious figure watches from a wooden watchtower, our reborn swordsman recalls cries mentioning Jack, Bo, and Rotten from the recon mission, especially how those recon squad members were badly hurt and likely found an excuse to make contact with Aspen. He finally collapses from his mortal wounds. Bystanders in the market hear a sudden thud and react, with one looking completely shocked. Enkrid's lifeless body lies on the ground as the conspirators walk away and someone screams. But then our hero wakes up in his bed with a shocked and determined expression. A resetting corporal jumps out of bed with newfound energy, brushing off his companion's concern, explaining he just wants to start the day with vigor. He then walks through the market, passing by a man with bandaged arms, and finds Audin pouring water over his head from a bucket, looking refreshed after washing. The muscular Audin asks Enkrid if he knows a training method to heat up his body, and our reborn swordsman confidently replies, "Yes, bare body training." Our battle-hardened veteran's face is serious, his eyes intense. A resetting corporal recalls the moment the dagger was pulled, realizing he couldn't react because his body wasn't prepared. He crouches, struggling internally and cursing himself for not noticing Jack and Bo sticking so close, planning to take those two down first, but then reconsiders, deciding not to lose the half-fairy by acting too soon. He kneels while Audin stands behind him, thinking about the assassins already screaming and whether they're within range for him to give chase. Looking at Jack and Bo, our battle-hardened veteran declares he'll take them down one by one. A resetting corporal walks through the market again with Jack and Bo, casually stating he was just training. He focuses on his hand, feeling his body is in its prime thanks to Audin. With his eye focused and the busy market scene around him, a hooded figure stands watching him from a distance. Our reborn swordsman prepares for combat, tensing his body and gripping his gear. Our resetting corporal suddenly punches a hooded figure in the face, who cries out in surprise. Man nearby panics, weapon in hand, exclaiming, "Fuck, did he notice?" The hooded figure stands isolated in the crowd, having to either run or attack. Enkrid readies his sword, intensely focused on his opponents, knowing he needs to take care of these two quickly. An assailant lunges forward with a weapon, attacking rapidly, but our hero is struck in the chest by a throwing dagger, reeling from the blow, his eye wide in shock as he realizes it's a throwing knife. He notes the impossible shot, coming from this distance through the crowd. Enkrid, wounded and spitting blood, stares ahead with grim resolve, recognizing the thrower is accurate. The hooded assailant grins menacingly, reaching out with a gloved hand. A reborn swordsman collapses to the ground after being struck by the deadly dagger, realizing it pierced his heart before he even noticed it flying, like a whisper in a hurricane. Bystanders in the market scream in terror at the unfolding violence, and Enkrid lies bleeding on the ground, contemplating his dire situation and knowing he needs to face both melee and ranged assailants at once. Our tireless grinder is back to training, pushing through his exhaustion to prepare for the assassin who throws a dagger even from far away, and he shakes his hands in frustration, muttering about how difficult it is. Rem, ever the brute, holds him down in a physical grip and playfully asks if he's still threatening him, while Ragna scoffs in the background, wondering how difficult this could possibly be. A long-haired squadmate jumps in, demonstrating a technique and telling Enkrid to come closer, insisting that even flexibility training is crucial, as Esther in panther form watches the squad stretch. The squadmate then looks at Enkrid's pained expression and asks why he looks so troubled, since they are just training. Our determined corporal, however, ignores the banter, sitting on a crate and drawing in the dirt with a stick, thinking that he needs to somehow block the dagger his assassin throws, because its accuracy and speed are unlike any other daggers he's encountered. His long-haired squadmate stands over him, and Enkrid looks up, asking for confirmation on the dagger's name, the Whistle Dagger. As the companion confirms it, our time-bending warrior locks his gaze, determined to learn its secrets. A hooded figure approaches our hero in the village market, and Enkrid moves swiftly in combat, thinking about what his enemy can do if he blocks the dagger ahead of time. He lands a decisive blow on one opponent, who cries out, but Enkrid struggles, grabbing his own cloak in a defensive reflex, realizing his enemy noticed his move. He grapples with an opponent, attempting to use him as a human shield to protect himself from the incoming dagger. But the opponent still manages to drive a dagger into Enkrid, who reacts with shock. Enkrid is struck by another dagger, blood spurting from his body as he is mortally wounded, gasping as blood spills from his fatally stabbed neck. He looks at his opponent in stunned disbelief, realizing he threw 3 daggers in that split second. The hooded antagonist reaches out a hand, looking menacingly toward our fallen hero, a sinister grin spreading across his face. He walks past bodies strewn across the ground, as bystanders whisper in horror that he kills his own people if they get in the way. Then the antagonist kneels over the defeated Enkrid, calling his attempt admirable and grins widely, calling Enkrid a persistent lover who never forgets his target. The antagonist tilts his head, his face partially obscured, and drives a blade deeper into Enkrid's chest, finishing off our hero once again. Meanwhile, a mysterious figure rose through a dark, ethereal realm, warning whoever is listening, "Laugh while you still can." A soft blue light from a lantern cuts through the darkness, as our resurrecting swordsman wakes up in his bed, staring at the ceiling, having reset the day once more. He stands up, preparing for another attempt, realizing this ability truly is a blessing. He finds Rem cleaning a small dagger with a piece of wood, and asks if that particular weapon would help with his explanation. Rem looks down, contemplating the unique blade, explaining that at one point it was called the dagger that is only heard, because its movement is so hard for the human eye to follow, like a hummingbird's wings. Enkrid stands over the seated Rem, who flatly tells him he simply can't follow the dagger. Rem looks intently at our hero, his eyes narrowed in concentration. He gestures with his hand, explaining the precise technique as Enkrid listens intently, absorbing every word. Rem, holding the dagger, looks at Enkrid and clarifies that it's not with the way he currently throws. Then Enkrid, calm and focused, asks Rem, "Do you want me to teach you how to throw daggers?" To which Rem replies that he doesn't have to if he's not confident enough. Our persistent protagonist looks focused, taking in the invaluable advice. The bustling market is alive with vendors shouting about cheap goods and freshly baked bread, as two soldiers observe Enkrid from behind, remarking on the honor of being on duty with the famous Spellbreaker and acknowledging his well-earned reputation. Our death-defying swordsman walks through the dusty ground, mentally reviewing Rem's advice. The moment you throw, relax your whole body, then focus as the blade leaves your hand. He swings his sword with great speed, decapitating an enemy soldier with a single swift strike. Enkrid lunges forward in a powerful combat maneuver, causing a hooded figure to scream in shock as people in the market react in terror. Our time-bending warrior stands ready in the middle of the market square, having swiftly defeated his target. The mysterious hooded antagonist then calmly walks through the crowded market, making his approach. The hooded antagonist stares intently with a glowing white eye, watching his opponent. Enkrid parries an attack, concentrating on the movement of his opponent's hand, and thinking that he can avoid dying instantly if he protects his heart, remembering to switch from relaxed to focused. He's struck in the shoulder by a dagger wielded by the hooded figure, crying out in pain and shock. Our persistent protagonist is knocked back, defending against the attack, but he grins with blood on his teeth because he saw it, that moving shine only for a split second. The hooded antagonist reaches out with a gloved hand, clearly knowing his target never forgets. He looks down at Enkrid, slumped on the ground, confident in this exchange. Enkrid looks up battered and bruised, questioning how the antagonist knew, but then states that after a few more times, he'll know all your tricks. Enkrid, bloodied and battered, confronts his unseen adversary, demanding to know how they discovered his tactics, but he promises himself that with just a few more attempts, he'll know all their tricks. He then lunges forward into the fray, as an unknown assailant orders his comrades to eliminate our stubborn corporal and another soldier. Amidst the chaotic battlefield, our resurrecting swordsman feels a deep resolve, knowing he's no longer just someone who dreams of doing better, but a warrior who can achieve his goals through sheer hard work. An enemy attacks with a glowing blade, which Enkrid confidently deflects with his bare hand, and the hooded opponent reacts in utter shock, unable to comprehend his counter. Our looping corporal senses an attack coming from the front, but despite his dodge, the enemy lands a hit with their glowing weapon, making Enkrid realize it was a devastating trick. He's knocked back hard, crashing onto the ground, and then the blade stabs him in the chest, as he registers that this weapon can adjust its timing to his every movement. He's struck once more. Even with blood on his face and staring death in the eye, our determined death magnet admits this weapon is pretty damn cool, and he wants to have it for himself. Soon after, Enkrid is practicing with a specialized whistle dagger, throwing it at an apple on a wooden surface, while talking to Jaxon about his training with blades. The whistle dagger spins perfectly through the air toward its target. Jaxon watches with a serious expression, as Enkrid and his squadmate train in an open field. But then, for the 8th time today, a hidden assassin fires a projectile at the unkillable swordsman. Enkrid quickly dodges, confident he won't fall for their delayed attacks again. But as he reacts, he's targeted once more, getting struck by an unseen projectile, as he realizes the assassin was there specifically to hit him after his dodge. The hooded assassin watches from a distant watchtower with a crossbow. The projectile strikes Enkrid in the neck, marking his 9th death of the day, and the assassin taunts him, snapping, "You idiot! You looked away!" Back in the loop, Enkrid diligently practices throwing a dagger, hitting the apple, while Jaxon observes his technique, explaining that the arm and hands are for guiding it, but the entire body is used for the throw. Our looping corporal continues to refine his technique, feeling it should be enough, as he takes instruction from Jaxon. He then reflects internally on Jaxon's hidden genius, asking himself how he could achieve such a level of competency just by watching. Enkrid hands a knife back to his companion, and looks forward with a serious, determined expression. While standing in a village area, he asks Jaxon if he's never heard about something, thinking he would have. Our determined death magnet looks forward with a piercing, intense gaze, and ignores two cloaked men who ask him where he wants to go, reminding him they're assigned to the market for their 10th attempt. The bewildered men worry about punishment as they follow him, but Enkrid looks over his shoulder with a sharp expression, as the two followers whisper behind him about what to do, deciding they have to follow him for now. Walks away from them on a hillside above the market, declaring, "The market is a stage that has been perfectly set up by the assassins. I don't need to play along with their GAMES. Our unkillable swordsman turns to confront the two men, questioning if they earned Krona for betraying him, and they respond by drawing their swords, shouting, "Kill HIM!" Enkrid skillfully deflects and counters their attack, and stands victorious as the two men lie defeated on the ground. He looks ahead with a cold, determined expression as a cloaked figure walks away. Enkrid then faces two new armed men in cloaks on a misty hillside. The hooded enemy looks at Enkrid, who then declares, "You're late. Come ATME." The hooded opponent lunges forward with a weapon, but Enkrid dodges, focusing on his opponent's hands as he throws, confident it doesn't matter how many come at him as long as he sees their hands. The crossbowman fires at Enkrid during the close-range engagement, who maneuvers quickly through the combat exchange and strikes his hooded opponent. A persistent corporal faces off against a hooded assailant who lunges forward, shouting in frustration as Enkrid coolly asks, "Anyway, how many of these do you have on you?" The enemy throws a dagger, striking the ground, but Enkrid holds his ground, already prepared, as the hooded opponent stares with narrowed eyes, getting ready for the next move. A repeating swordsman stays alert, knowing that while his adversary may hide their hands, they can't conceal their entire arm. Enkrid focuses intensely, deducing that keeping the assailant's posture in sight is the key to dodging these impossibly fast daggers, moving like a blur. Just then, the hooded figure prepares another attack. A hand grips a dagger tightly, and Enkrid's eyes widen as he spots two incoming at once. The hooded attacker swings a pair of blades at him, but Enkrid skillfully dodges both. His eyes focused, our time-looping tactical genius thinks that his enemy probably has plenty more where those came from, and the wicked smile on the attacker's face confirms it. With his blade raised, Enkrid prepares for his counter, while the enemy looks on with a manic expression. Then Enkrid lunges forward with his sword, catching the hooded enemy completely by surprise, who quickly scrambles into a defensive stance, realizing Enkrid has something he hasn't seen before. The hooded enemy leaps through the air, wielding a blade in an aggressive low pose, which Enkrid quickly identifies as a new type of attack. The assassin swings his sword downward in a powerful arc, but Enkrid skillfully blocks the strike, leaving the hooded opponent utterly shocked and confused. Enkrid strikes from above in close quarters, standing tall and determined as he prepares to deliver a decisive blow. The enemy's hand reacts in pain, and our sharp-eyed hero lands a finishing blow, knocking the hooded enemy to the ground with a powerful follow-up. Standing over his defeated foe, Enkrid reflects, "It took 10 tries to overcome this wall." He looks down, exhausted but triumphant, declaring, "It's so insanely exhilarating." The defeated enemy lies motionless, and Enkrid looks surprised, noticing a series of hidden blades tucked into the opponent's chest. His intense gaze shows he's already analyzing the new information. Later, in an outdoor military camp, someone asks if he almost got assassinated, as Enkrid stands reporting to a stern superior officer. The officer listens, then dismisses him, responding with a thoughtful silence. His superior commands him to return to his post, and Enkrid complies. Walking away, our repeating swordsman is deep in thought. Suddenly, an object is thrown at him, hitting the wall right behind him. Enkrid rounds on Audin, asking, "Are you insane? You almost killed me," as he reacts in pain or annoyance to the near miss. Audin holds the glowing, hot object, and Enkrid haggles with him and another soldier for a haircut, arguing about squadmate discounts and prices, like it's a bustling market. Another soldier starts cutting Enkrid's hair, while he insists on paying a fair price because the city barbers are terrible. Squadmate looks up at the sky, noting how cold it is, as they all complain about the relentless snow, describing it as damned devil's powdered shit, and thinking it's a test from God. While getting his hair cut, Enkrid contemplates how the assassins infiltrated the border guard, and a young red-haired soldier asks him if he knows where the 3 recently deceased soldiers came from. Another squadmate explains that Bo, one of the dead, insulted a noble, and Enkrid thinks about a guild that flushed out its members a year ago, connecting the dots to a thieves' guild, which makes sense for knowing the city's ins and outs. A hooded character asks why Enkrid is questioning him, then admits that their contact in the guild went silent after they restructured. The soldier finishes cutting Enkrid's hair, and Enkrid checks his new look. Suddenly, Rem yells at the hooded character and Enkrid, "You damn pussy, I know you're trying to get out of snow shoveling duty," standing with the hooded figure, ready to make them work. Rem insists they leave immediately, and the red-haired soldier expresses his shared dislike for shoveling snow. Another soldier says he still needs permission from the company commander, as Rem and the hooded figure walk away, making Enkrid realize these guys are truly united on this matter. Enkrid stands before Esther, who's in human form and sitting at a desk with scrolls, when she pointedly asks, Not because you want to skip snow duty? A close-up of Esther's face shows her pointed ear, and Enkrid's blue eye is focused as he insists he does not. Esther gives him a knowing look, and our time-looping tactical genius thinks to himself that she's definitely sharp. As dusk settles over a snow-covered village, our persistent corporal, Enkrid, and his squad walk through the falling snow, trying to determine if the Gilfin Guild is connected to the assassins. A squad mate asks Enkrid if he has any information, but he doesn't. Enkrid tells Ragna to find where they are, leaving Ragna wondering how he's supposed to do that. But our time-looping tactical genius stays focused on the task at hand, while his squad mates look concerned by the mission's scope, and Ragna gets thoughtful, already planning his next move. Another squad member just looks confused. Later, inside a warm tavern, Enkrid and his squad are eating dinner, still discussing the Gilfin Guild, with a squad mate asking if they're innocent, and Enkrid retorting that even if they aren't involved with the assassins, they're still criminals. One squad member just focuses on their food, while a server named Lesa walks by, prompting a squad mate to call out to her. The squad notices Jaxon is late, but one comments that it's typical for him, even though they're discussing his expertise. Meanwhile, Ragna, our nimble scout, is already scaling the roof of a nearby building, looking down from his snowy perch. Two cloaked figures walk through the snowy streets at night. Back in the crowded tavern, a squad mate reveals he knows a lot about Lesa. Her father's a shoemaker, and she dreams of opening an inn in the capital, which another squad mate finds impressive. Just then, Ragna bursts in from the cold, covered in snow, announcing, "I've found where they are located," as the rest of the squad watches him from their table, surprised but ready. Our sword master Enkrid looks up, his hair and shoulders dusted with snow, a serious expression on his face. He holds out a piece of food, offering it to Ragna, who declines, saying there's no need. Ragna then warns Enkrid about the mission's brutality, asking if he wants to shower in your own blood. It'll be warm. Enkrid and his squad discuss their limited mobility in the heavy snow, deciding they need to be careful and should wait until it stops. A persistent corporal stares out the window at the swirling white, then abruptly stands, cutting off a squad mate by declaring, "I've been careful enough." Moments later, the squad is back out in the biting cold, lamenting how nice the inn was. A cloaked figure sits on the ground, seemingly waiting. The hooded assassin draws a dagger, signaling an ambush. Two assassins leap forward to attack, moving like coiled springs, but a squad member swiftly blocks with an axe, ready to defend. An assassin is struck square in the face, another getting a brutal punch from a squad member, proving these fighters are more than ready. The squad quickly deals with the defeated assassins, making short work of the ambush. Ragna moves to investigate a door, finding it locked. Ragna confirms the door is locked to his companion. Rem, our axe-wielding barbarian, prepares to smash it open, which he does with brute force, sending wood splinters flying. Our time-looping tactical genius smiles, pointing towards a dark, open passage leading underground, suggesting they enter. As they descend, Rem, carrying his massive axe over his shoulder, comments that as long as it gets the door open, he's fine. Enkrid, Rem, and the squad make their way down the dimly lit wooden stairs into a cellar, with Rem asking what Enkrid will ask them first. Our persistent corporal looks ahead, his expression serious and focused. They find a long, dark tunnel stretching to another locked door in the distance. A group of hostile squad members sits in a cramped room by the door, confirming the squad leader is coming because of an informant. One of them grips his sword hilt tightly, preparing for combat. Suddenly, a soldier smashes through their wooden door like a battering ram, scoffing at the thought of nobodies being with him. It's Rem, our boisterous barbarian, who grins broadly, clenching his fist after his grand entrance. Another soldier watches, looking nervous and sweaty, the bravado draining from his face. Rem laughs fiercely from behind Enkrid, who stands calm and composed, stating a profound truth about those who have never killed the weak. As a sword is drawn and lowered, causing a metallic spark against the floor. The sword tip strikes the dusty ground, creating a small cloud. Our sword master Enkrid stands firmly, having just stabbed his sword into the floor, looking utterly intimidating. Rem, previously annoyed, looks at Enkrid and admits his mind has been changed. Enkrid looks at Rem, a hint of a smirk on his face, asking, "Pretty cool just now, right?" An angry soldier clenches his hands on his sword hilt, clearly not impressed. Rem grins, putting his arm around Enkrid's shoulders, now fully on board. A persistent corporal makes a clawing gesture with his hand, still holding his sword, a calm, knowing smile spreading across his face. He confronts a soldier who looks at him with intense focus, as a voice yells for the soldier to face him. As an opponent charges, Enkrid readies his stance, listening to the man's boasts about never being beaten, and asking if he'll be able to block his sword. Enkrid parries the opponent's sword strike with his own, sending bright sparks flying. Then with lethal precision, Enkrid lands a clean sword strike to the opponent's neck, ending the duel instantly. Our time-looping tactical genius remains completely calm after the swift kill, his face unmoving. The nervous soldier watches the outcome, beads of sweat visible on his brow. Enkrid stands over his defeated opponent, who lies on the ground, blood pooling around him. Looking composed and determined, Enkrid gives them, "Last chance. Surrender." Rem and the other squad members look on, reacting to the situation with Rem skeptical, wondering aloud, "Is he trying to ACT cool right now. Our sword master Enkrid stands ready with his blade, looking sternly ahead, as Rem, Ragna, and the other squad members look on with focused expressions. His squad mates continue to question his showmanship, wondering if he's trying to act cool right now. Enkrid holds his sword out, prepared for the next wave, and a mace strikes the ground near him. He swiftly blocks a strike with his arm, keeping his sword close, as another combatant charges forward with a fierce expression. The combatant swings his sword towards our determined leader, but Enkrid's blade strikes the opponent in the head with impossible speed, and he reaches out his hand towards the reeling combatant, almost pushing him back. The combatant is knocked back from the strike, clearly defeated. Rem, our boisterous barbarian, looks disappointed, exclaiming, I just thought that he was cool, damn it. But a squadmate expresses admiration for Enkrid's performance, calling him a cool brother squad leader, and another thinks that was sick. Our time-looping tactical genius closes his eyes with a thoughtful expression, admitting to himself that it must have been pretty cool. As the dust settles, the remaining soldiers beg for their lives, pleading for mercy. Enkrid and his squad loom over the surrendering group, who continue to beg for mercy. Our persistent corporal looks down at a kneeling soldier and states that their crimes aren't excused. The captured soldier pleads, offering himself as a sacrifice if someone must die. Enkrid looks on with a stoic and unimpressed expression, completely unmoved by the plea. He points at a fallen soldier, questioning the surrendering group about who their real boss was, which they clarify was the fallen man. Enkrid keeps pointing as the surrendering soldiers look dejected, flatly denying they were the boss. Looking annoyed and cynical, our time-looping tactical genius comments that the guilds deliberately name themselves after random people. The captured soldier looks down, trembling and distraught. Fellow soldiers surround the crying captive and plead for mercy on his behalf, citing his kindness and his sick mother, even offering to take his place. Squadmate yells angrily, pointing at Enkrid, outraged by his lack of compassion. The captive cries out in pure panic and terror, overwhelmed by the situation. Enkrid looks coolly at his squadmate, keeping a neutral expression unaffected by their pleas. The squad begins looting the hideout, with one soldier smashing open a wooden crate, revealing hidden loot inside, commenting they needed to find the key the dead bastard hid. Enkrid tells his squad members to go ahead and proceed with the looting. Soldiers excitedly scramble for items and leather gear from the crate, thrilled to find warm thermal leather. Enkrid reaches into the crate to examine an item, realizing he's found something special. Close-up reveals a brown leather tunic being inspected by our persistent corporal. He looks over at a squadmate who is watching him, curious, and the squadmate smiles happily back. Later, Enkrid sits and listens to his squadmate standing over him, confirming a detail about the loot. Our sword master looks ahead with a focused expression as they rest. The young red-haired soldier explains to a bald squadmate that another leader will simply appear in its place. Enkrid discusses with his squadmates around a fire, noting how convenient this all seems, wondering if it ties into past events. A squadmate listens as another speaks, asking if Enkrid had noticed. The young red-haired soldier points a finger, explaining their plan. Our persistent corporal listens intently, stoic as ever, remarking that he doesn't particularly want a lot of krona. The red-haired soldier points emphatically, stating he'll allow it. He continues, explaining they'll slowly work to reform this organization. The red-haired soldier looks thoughtful, envisioning the changes. The bald squadmate hangs his head, feeling ashamed that he worked for Aspen and their money. The red-haired soldier smiles and gives a thumbs up, asking for Enkrid's thoughts. Our time-looping tactical genius prepares to leave, telling them if they got what they wanted, it's time to head back. Back at camp, Enkrid looks troubled, his eyes glowing slightly with internal thought. He looks out the window at the falling snow, deep in contemplation. Blonde soldier lies down, watching Enkrid. Another soldier sits by the fire, reflecting. Enkrid closes his eyes, deep in thought about his ongoing mission. The exterior of their wooden cabin is covered in snow at night, peaceful for a moment. A report comes in through the icy branches, simply stating that all squad members have returned. Our persistent corporal is then confronted by a female soldier who questions if he had fun skipping snow duty. Enkrid internally thinks she's too smart, claiming he has no clue what she's talking about. He challenges him in the snowy training yard, holding his sheathed sword, adding, "I hear you don't turn down a duel." The female soldier unsheathes her thin, whip-like blade, readying herself. Enkrid draws his sword and charges, internally realizing it's a duel, not a punishment, as he thought she was angry. But then, of course, he's swiftly knocked to the ground, grimacing in pain. Enkrid struggles to stand up after being thrown, puffing from the effort and the impact. He's struck down again during the duel, landing with a pained grunt. Enkrid reacts in shock, observing his opponent's weapon, exclaiming, "What? Was her sword always that thin? It's almost like a whip." Lying frustrated on the snow, he expresses his annoyance, admitting he feels useless without his sword, but is told to get up and try again. Enkrid catches his breath, exhausted and defeated on the snowy ground. Female soldier observes him, reflecting on his changing performance, noting, "I've seen him respond instantly, almost like he knows the future. But now it seems like he's a blind man." As Enkrid struggles on the ground, she continues to reflect, acknowledging that he broke the spell and killed 4 assassins, but admits, "I really don't know who he is as a person." A close-up of the female soldier's face emphasizes her words. She moves away as Enkrid remains on the ground, realizing aloud that it was because of the snow. Close-up of our persistent corporal's face shows his reflection. Pathetic. I've trained endlessly with the sword, but I've never done anything with my bare hands. Kneeling in the snow, Enkrid has a sudden realization, declaring what he's lacking now. The image of a muscular back appears, representing his internal thought. Martial arts, something that requires the use of your body and limbs. Audin, our hulking martial artist, realizes what he's been lacking, so he lifts a massive tree trunk like it's a twig, then slams it down with earth-shattering force. He stands there, a titan of raw power, clearly feeling complete. Our stubborn corporal watches with a serious expression, knowing what's coming, as Audin points to a tree and reveals his training method. Push your body to the extreme. He even smiles, delighted by the impending suffering. Enkrid, ever the disciplined soldier, looks focused, his gaze intensifying with a silent promise of no surrender. And just like that, he's struggling under a massive rock, feeling like a beetle pinned under a boulder, muttering, "I'm gonna die." Audin watches, explaining that muscles grow stronger as they're torn to shreds. To really drive the point home, Audin presses down on the rock, adding even more weight. He just keeps smiling, truly enjoying his role as a brutal mentor. Enkrid, though, refuses to let regret stop his progress, thinking he doesn't have time for it. He flashes back to battle, a grim reminder that without this relentless drive, he wouldn't have survived his first day. He knows that his survival depends on this constant effort. His face shows that intense focus, pushing past the pain. Audin closes his eyes, marveling at such an undefilable work ethic. A resurrecting swordsman carries the giant rock, ready to move on to the next impossible task. Audin, shirtless and radiating power, oversees the whole thing with a pleased smirk. Even Esther, in her black panther form, growls nearby, seeming to either mock or encourage his suffering. Audin points at Enkrid, probably giving more impossible instructions, with the panther still watching. Later, Rem sits in their barracks, looking absolutely exhausted. And there's Enkrid, completely beat up again, while Rem wonders why he keeps coming back so battered, though Enkrid claims he's just training normally. Our stubborn corporal gently holds Esther, who makes a soft sound. He tries to give her a name, with Rem looking on. Enkrid suggests a name like Heater because she's warm, or he offers Blacky Blue for her blue eyes, which makes Esther hiss angrily. Rem, however, thinks Blacky Blue is cute. Enkrid lies in bed, and the panther curls up on top of him. Esther gives a silent, knowing look, and then our hero, the soldier who won't stay dead, sleeps soundly. He wakes up in a field of glowing purple flowers, startled. It's a surreal, magical dreamscape. He notes the bosun isn't here, which probably doesn't fit his vibe. Glowing petals float around him in this dream. Then he sees her, Esther, in her stunning human form, standing amidst the flowers. Close-up shows her side profile, looking serene. Her eyes glow faintly as she looks forward. Enkrid's face is in close-up, gazing at her. He approaches her, calling out her name. She looks directly at him with a serious expression, connecting in this dream. Back in reality, Enkrid sleeps calmly. He's cuddling Esther, who is now in her human form next to him. But Esther's face shows a hint of concern as she sleeps. She suddenly wakes up, her eyes wide and startled. Enkrid, without a word, pulls her into a tight hug. The entire barracks is shown, with everyone sleeping on their beds. Enkrid stands fully armored, preparing to leave again, which Rem notices. He looks back at Rem and Esther, who's in her panther form on the bed. Esther the panther watches him, sensing something. Our stubborn corporal looks down, pensive, as he asks them to free him from his curse, saying he can't have them die throwing their bodies around. Rem asks if he met a priest last night, hinting at the dream. Enkrid, thinking about the dream, asks what kind of woman it was. Esther, in her human form, looks down calmly, knowing exactly who he's asking about. Enkrid continues to speak, his gaze fixed to the side. Meanwhile, Panther Esther sleeps, internally noting that at least his eyes are fine. In a mental image, Esther's panther form walks on water, casting a human shadow, revealing she got cursed and turned into a beast, her powers bound in her quest for knowledge. She watches our resurrecting swordsman from the tall grass, realizing the scent of a curse led her to him. Audin stands behind Enkrid, who's still training, mentioning it normally takes over a week for a broken body to heal. Our hero leans over, completely out of breath from his relentless training. Esther the panther hisses from a roof, calling him Blacky Blue, that idiot. Esther's human spirit looms over the scene, explaining that magic is affected by names, and if she's carelessly called by another name, her powers will weaken further. She recalls making a mistake while doing so, showing her human form in bed with Enkrid. Close-up of her eye reveals her thought, but thank God he's a dull man. Enkrid and Audin stand in the barracks, and Esther internally confirms he's definitely under a curse. Her panther face is shown in close-up, thinking that it hasn't fully set in yet, but his curse is far more powerful than hers. Her human spirit then reveals her full plan. She will eventually recover her powers because a powerful curse slowly eats away at weaker curses near it. So if she stays by his side, she'll regain her strength. Stubborn Corporal is back in the grueling thick of it, with Audin Pumray raining down powerful strikes that Enkrid just keeps taking, barely holding his own in the close-quarters combat as they trade blows. Audin, that massive brute, then pins our exhausting swordsman's head to the ground with his foot, sending him sprawling across the dirt. But Enkrid, the reset warrior, just pops back up. Audin tells him that for martial arts, just like swordsmanship, his body needs to be ready. Another squadmate, watching our determined corporal, remarks that he really doesn't know when to quit, as Enkrid keeps sparring with his sword, improving quickly, and his comrade, smiling, notes that Enkrid has improved so much they can finally fight properly. Later, after a quick meal, Ragna, ever the wise one, tells our stubborn corporal that his muscle memory alone should be able to do this in his sleep. But Enkrid is still gasping for air, drenched in sweat, but wearing a determined smile. Our exhausting swordsman then sits on his bed, deep in thought, realizing that while training with his squad is great, more real-life experiences would also be welcome. Suddenly, he's attacked by a surprise strike, but instinctively parries with his sword, showing how far he's come. His comrade is impressed by his progress. Enkrid then chats with another soldier, noticing he's in early and asking if he shouldn't be out earning money, while Esther, our favorite panther form mage, purrs nearby, startling the soldier in his bed. Esther's movement even makes the soldier react with alarm. Just then, our corporal hears a noise and looks up to see a stern-looking woman, the company commander, standing in the doorway, entering the room. Enkrid observes her, his expression serious. Soon, our determined corporal finds himself among other soldiers reviewing notices on a bulletin board about a new mercenary soldier policy, which allows people in cities to hire soldiers as mercenaries. Enkrid thinks it's great because it's cheaper than proper mercenaries, uses better trained people, and they're more polite, making it quite popular, and he wants to test himself. The company commander, that stern woman, instructs him after a tired soldier walks by, asking how many it will take for a mission, and tells him to bring 3 in total, including a squad member. Enkrid, confused, wonders why the company commander is doing this herself. Another soldier, watching them from a distance, whispers that he heard those two dueled each other too. The commander just looks sternly at our stubborn corporal, while another soldier looks on with starry-eyed admiration. Rumors fly around, with one soldier leaning in to say that the company commander and the Spellbreaker, which must be Enkrid, definitely have something going on. Our exhausting swordsman then carries a heavy load on his back as other soldiers joke about how he managed to pull a fairy with that face, though they do admit they look great together, leaving Enkrid looking utterly exhausted. As he walks through a doorway, one smiling man says they've heard wrong, but another red-haired man just laughs, teasing him not to be shy because they'll find out eventually. 2 other soldiers, sitting back to back, tell Enkrid that it sounds great and to keep her by his side and train with her, wishing blessings on his future brother. Enkrid, annoyed, feels like he's being bullied, while Rem, holding his axe, asks, "So when are we going on your date?" Enkrid, serious, asks if he's talking about the mission, prompting Rem to swing his axe and joke that Enkrid would be the first to axe the commissioner if he got pissed. Enkrid then walks with the company commander, asking if she's bringing him because she thinks he won't cause trouble, and she replies that she thought he would be of help since he takes these missions often too. Our determined corporal then offers her a piece of advice. The woman listens intently as Enkrid, looking serious, asks when the commissioner will arrive. The commander says soon, adding that the commissioner probably hasn't heard the rumors yet, and it'll be awkward, then pivots back to the mission. Our stubborn corporal, quick to notice, tells her, "I heard you laugh." She replies that she doesn't know what he's talking about, then she asks if it makes him glad, to which Enkrid stutters between no and yes. She presses, asking what he liked about it, and Enkrid, internally screaming, wonders why she's asking him all this. Carriage rolls by, and our exhausting swordsman walks with the commander, who continues to push his buttons. Our stubborn corporal then looks at the woman after speaking. He looks utterly skeptical, exclaiming, "Fun! That was a joke." With that expression, the carriage continues to move along a cobblestone road. Enkrid and his companion walk past a building, the conversation clearly not over. The woman's lower face shows a subtle expression. Enkrid looks skeptical while listening to her, as they stand next to the carriage in a busy town square. Meanwhile, a shadowy figure with glowing red eyes smiles menacingly, revealing they expected the heir to be some greedy toad. But fear doesn't affect them, then in a bizarre turn yells, "Random bullshit, go! Why, you didn't want to seduce your husband," signaling a new chaotic threat. Enkrid and the commissioner arrive in a quiet village, her entourage including the maid, but our observant corporal notices not a word has been spoken from the commissioner herself since their initial greeting, with all communication filtering through her maid, who explains they'll get a room at the inn and wait for other heirs. He figures his role is simply to escort her, nothing more, but this is a perfect chance to hone his battlefield analysis, recalling Audin's lessons about observing age, body stance, and gaze. Our persistent swordsman focuses his eye, determined to observe and analyze everything, starting with a guard whose heavy footsteps and sword indicate she's left-handed and quite strong. His initial analysis feels a bit lacking since none seem as strong as a special rank, but it'll do for now. And as they walk, Ragna looks his way, ready to compare notes. Together, they identify various environmental sounds, from a woman at the food market to a blacksmith's hammer in the alley. But Ragna spots something more pressing, cutting him off to point out a suspicious figure near the shoe store. As they enter a tavern, the group leader tells the others to wait, and a female elf knight at a nearby table, intrigued, decides to join them, adding that fairies are much more sensitive than humans. Inside, our quick-thinking leader's senses are on high alert, detecting a knife being ground upstairs and a dagger unsheathed by the inn's entrance. He's even picking up someone crouching silently outside the window, realizing he can't even participate in this external threat, while the more immediate problem is lurking right under their table. The atmosphere shifts, a squadmate noting someone is quietly observing them, making it clear this is no longer a game. Suddenly, Enkrid and his squad initiate a lightning-fast surprise attack, our determined swordsman gripping his hilt and focusing intently as he prepares for combat. The female elf knight delivers a precise, lethal strike to an opponent's neck, while two armored soldiers brace themselves with shields and swords against the sudden threat. A hooded assailant lunges at Enkrid from above with a dagger, but our hero strikes back instantly, blood spraying as he retaliates. Enkrid stands in the tavern, his primary focus on protecting the commissioner. An assailant throws multiple daggers across the room, but our stubborn corporal deflects them with his small shield in the heat of combat. Female elf knight skillfully parries an attack while fighting multiple hooded enemies, and the assassins look shocked, unable to believe how strong they are, shouting, "Why are they so strong?" As Enkrid continues fighting, the female elf knight watches with a calm expression, noting a squad far stronger than its leader, but they all listen and trust him, making her wonder who helped create this unique unit. She looks on with interest, a slight smile playing on her lips, then strikes another assassin in the neck with her blade. Enkrid lands a decisive strike on an opponent, his eyes focused and intense, recalling his encounters with the assassin that went after Krang and the half-fairy assassin, realizing that attacks like this no longer faze him. He dodges an incoming strike while lunging toward an assailant, demanding, "Where YA goin'?" and feels all the strength and combat skills he's been practicing. Flashback to his training shows, and Enkrid realizing his instincts are sharpened, feeling his movements are completely different now, even if Audin still thinks he's too slow. He proves his point by performing a high kick, knocking an assassin through the air, and stands ready with his bloody sword as another masked assassin leaps toward the two women they're protecting. The women react in surprise and terror as the assassin attacks, with one screaming, "My lady!" Enkrid grips his sword tightly, his focused expression revealing he's too close for whistled daggers, and stopping this assassin can't be guaranteed. From a bird's-eye view, our quick-thinking leader watches the assassin leap, wondering if he can reach them and how to quickly close the distance. He recalls seeing a swift movement once on a past battlefield, surrounded by flying arrows, and with a forceful step, he initiates a rapid dash. If he can replicate even a little bit of it, he will intercept the leaping assassin midair, whose eyes widen behind his mask during the sudden impact. Enkrid shoulder tackles the assassin, knocking him away from the two women, slamming them both against the wall. The masked assassin's eye fills with shock as he realizes the outcome. Our determined swordsman feels the impact of the blade, but thanks to the Gilfin Guild's leather armor, he isn't wounded. His cloak is ripped, revealing his protective gear, and the assassin struggles as Enkrid continues his momentum during their clash. He slams the assassin through the second-story window of the building, landing on top of him after crashing through the structure. The masked assassin coughs, appearing dazed and defeated on the ground. Enkrid stands up, calmly explaining he managed to cushion his fall with the assassin's body, while the two women watch him. He considers his next tactical move, noting there are no more enemies on the second floor, but this guy still has some fight in him. The injured and bleeding assassin prepares to fight, calling Enkrid a "you crazy bastard." Our hero stands facing him, ready for a sword duel as the assassin taunts, "Then there's no reason why I shouldn't be able to beat you," noting Enkrid's two swords of different lengths and balanced stance. Our hero's focused eyes evaluate the assassin's technique, wondering if he uses the flowing sword. He prepares for his first real fight in a while, warning the assassin, "Don't you often hear that you talk too much?" before he lunges. The assassin thinks Enkrid seems strong enough, and they engage in a high-speed clash of swords, with our determined swordsman staring intensely, preparing to counter. The fierce sword duel continues, with our disciplined corporal parrying incoming attacks from the cloaked enemy soldier, maintaining an intense guard with his sword. The enemy soldier swings his sword downward in a powerful strike, but our focused leader focuses with a sharp expression, recognizing the two swords coming in tandem. He identifies it as a Valen duet technique, readying his stance and tracking the incoming blade. He narrowly dodges a strike, moving like a matador as the enemy soldier slashes at him, then deflects a lunging strike from his opponent's sword. Our refined swordsman pivots to evade another high-speed slash, standing firm while the enemy soldier glances over his shoulder in frustration. The enemy soldier looks visibly strained and sweaty while fighting, but Enkrid looks coldly at his opponent, assessing his skill level and finding him about as good as the one he'd previously called a stabbing pervert. Enraged, the enemy soldier lunges again, shouting, "What are you saying, you crazy bastard?" But Enkrid's eyes glow intensely as he enters a state of deep concentration, standing ready against his opponent as they exchange strikes. His eyes glow with intense concentration as he observes the battle, quickly discerning his path of attack. Moving quickly with his sword drawn, he prepares to counter the enemy and executes a precise, powerful downward strike with his sword. Enkrid parries an enemy soldier's sword strike during a tense standoff, his blade successfully striking through his opponent's torso. The enemy soldier gasps, feeling the sword pierce through his chest, wishing he'd tried to go for the heart. He screams in pain as Enkrid's sword completes its deadly arc. Our disciplined corporal stands over the defeated soldier, contemplating his next training partner, wondering if he should train with Ragna or Jaxon. He looks up, his expression stoic and alert as he scans the surroundings, watching as the remaining enemy soldiers retreat from the scene in a panic, yelling for everyone to fall back. Enkrid speaks to a comrade about the commotion, stating they need to get them all, and points out that his comrade's fight drew too much attention. Close-up shows his comrade looking at Enkrid with a serious expression, and Enkrid turns his head to address someone, appearing focused and resolute as he says, "Now." An elf-like comrade, looking slightly concerned, approaches him and then asks a pointed question. Looking directly at Enkrid, he asks, "Was all this a joke to you, then?" Our refined swordsman looks visibly distressed, his face partially darkened, wondering what's wrong with everyone. The blonde woman whom he saved addresses him by name, looking worried, and expresses gratitude, promising to repay him properly in the future. Enkrid looks down at the blonde woman who holds her chest. Later, sitting alone at a small wooden table, lit by a single candle, our focused leader ponders who those assassins were. Some were pretty skilled, so they weren't just here to rob them, meaning they have to assume it's the other heirs. The blonde woman approaches Enkrid again, who is seated at the tavern table, looking at him intently. Enkrid and the blonde woman sit together at the table. She has a thoughtful, serious look, as she recalls different images of cloaked figures in a desert, a lone hooded figure in a blizzard, and a map of the kingdom laid out on a wooden table. The blonde woman looks contemplative, revealing her goal to protect and grow this organization against the stupid sons of the previous owner. And to do that, she needs talented people. With her hands clasped near her chin, she continues to speak to Enkrid, who sits across from her at the table. She asks him something, and when he refuses, she comments that continuing to ask after being refused is unsightly, just as a new armored figure walks down the stairs behind Enkrid. The blonde woman bows her head in a pensive or dejected manner. Then she stands near him, speaking about preparation, noting she'll need to prepare for that. But another woman, presumably the maid, confronts Enkrid, telling him flat out, "No, you need to stop going around and seducing all these women." The blonde woman reacts with surprise, and Enkrid's face appears frustrated and tense. He looks up with a confused and intense expression, while the blonde woman looks surprised, wondering if this is a comeback. Enkrid looks to the side as two men appear in the doorway behind him, shouting, "WOOW, what an asshole!" The blonde woman smiles slightly at the spectacle, as Enkrid sits alone at the wooden table with a candle and a mug. Young man with red hair grins, leaning against the table. He listens to the red-haired man, who teases that he's not the Spellbreaker but rather a heartbreaker. Enkrid asks if he's here to make fun of him too, but the red-haired man gestures, saying it's actually about the Gilfin Guild. Our focused leader stares intently at the red-haired man, who looks back curiously. Our hero's face shows his determination, as he realizes he needs to catch them and see what they're up to. The once distinguished Rockwefried family, led by this stern patriarch, is now facing a succession crisis, with his daughter, Leona, poised to be his successor thanks to her sharp wit and intellect, while his son, Paulide, clearly has other ideas for the family's future. And with the funeral hall set for the departed head, the stage is now open for some family drama. A first glance at Paulide Rokefried shows him impatiently riding in a carriage, and a closer look reveals his suspicious smirk as the son of Reno's Rokefried, already planning his takeover. A man with a dark beard watches the carriage intently as it pulls up to the gate, where Paulide immediately starts shouting about how he'll handsomely reward anyone who helps him inherit everything. The carriage finally arrives at a heavily guarded gate, bringing the dramatic air right into the city, where our observing Corporal Enkrid is already waiting, hearing Paulide complain about the dust like it's a personal affront. As the man with long dark hair steps out of the carriage, his gaze lingers on the scene, and our calculating tactician watches everything with a serious, focused expression, taking it all in, while the bearded man takes a moment to scan his surroundings, perhaps looking for trouble. Paulide, completely oblivious to Enkrid, angrily points and demands that someone go call Leona. But our corporal is already thinking about Jaxon, reflecting that it was a good choice to bring him along, because if that had been Rem, a ghoul had popped up in the city, which means chaos, and Jaxon would have already split its head open and moved on to the next target. True to form, Jaxon swiftly maneuvers behind his target, ready to strike without a sound. Meanwhile, Leona, a woman with braided hair, stands calmly in a room full of hooded figures, radiating authority, her serious expression showing that she means business, even before the chaos begins. Suddenly, a man in a fur-trimmed coat gets in her face, clearly furious about something, but Leona doesn't hesitate, striking him across the face without a second thought. Our observing corporal watches the escalating scene with a stern, focused expression, not missing a beat, as the fur-coat man yells in shock, calling her crazy, to which Leona coolly replies that he is the crazy one. She then leans in close, her voice cold and threatening, asking if he wants to rot in prison for the rest of his life. A third man clears his throat, attempting to interject and de-escalate the situation, but the fur-coat man is frantic, shouting that it wasn't him and accusing her of trying to frame someone else. Leona simply looks down at him, her expression unchanging and stern, clearly unimpressed, and continues to mock him, questioning his ability to even calculate finances. He looks absolutely offended, protesting that such tasks are a job for his servants, not him. Leona's annoyance is palpable as she looks down at the entitled man, already fed up with his excuses. A calculating tactician observes the ongoing argument, thinking that the previous head must have been soft, because Leona clearly seems more suited to be the successor, wondering if the father just wanted to give his son one last chance. The man in the fur coat tries to argue back, demanding to know what reason is more important than his. But Leona quickly cuts him off, grabbing him by the throat in a swift, brutal move and leaning in close, pinning him against the wall with absolute dominance. The fur coat man reacts with aggression, immediately drawing his weapon in a desperate defense, and Enkrid, already ready for combat, prepares to strike at a moment's notice. Close-up on our corporal's intense, focused eye shows he's not taking this lightly, and he draws his sword with a determined look, standing before the agitated man in the fur coat. A blur of motion signifies an instant strike, as Jaxon likely intervenes with a swift kick, and Enkrid and his squad immediately confront the man in the fur coat, establishing a tense standoff. Our focused swordsman grips the hilt of his sword, his expression calm and ready for whatever comes next, and the fur coat man lets out a startled gasp, clearly surprised by the sudden show of force. Our focused swordsman stares intently, observing his opponent's stance, quickly identifying that he wields the swift sword fighting style. Enkrid holds his sword, challenging his opponent to attack, demanding he show his sword, and asking how fast it will be, faster than Rem's axe or a whistle dagger. The opponent wastes no time, lunging forward with a dark, blurred movement, ready to strike, his fierce grin showing just how confident he is as his sword strikes toward the viewer. Enkrid and his squad look on, maintaining their tense readiness, watching the exchange unfold. Just then, a man steps forward, speaking firmly to the group, looking down with an air of authority, causing the fur coat man to make another pained or startled facial expression. Our observing corporal watches the scene with his usual calm, observant expression, taking it all in. Enkrid and another man exchange a quiet, intense look, a silent understanding passing between them, as Leona then looks at Enkrid with a weary, questioning expression, calling him the weirdest one here. The man with gray hair authoritatively announces that they're taking over this case, revealing that the men confess to being paid by a merchant association. The fur coat man lets out a grunt as he's unceremoniously shoved forward, his schemes unraveling. The soldier stares seriously ahead, while someone behind him looks panicked, feeling the pressure. The gray-haired man stands with his arms crossed, remaining observant, ensuring everything is under control. Enkrid stands behind Leona and another man, listening intently to their conversation, gathering more intel. Our corporal looks at Leona, contemplating the bizarre situation where the victim is asking to be locked up, which is a new one for him. Leona looks down at the men, stating there are still more people to interrogate, hinting at a wider conspiracy. She then turns to face the fur coat man, discussing the border guards, and casually mentions that if they can't find the ones behind this, it will be up to the border guards to handle. Leona, focused and composed, then declares that they will return to their city, implying their part is done. But our calculating tactician observes this, realizing they won't be guarded by Leona's team if they leave the city, meaning her bodyguards won't be able to take on Pollide's men, especially that guy with the rapier, and the target will die as soon as they leave border protection. He looks intensely at the scene, thinking she surely knows this, wondering what on earth she's thinking. Leona then subtly hands a piece of fabric to a hooded person, a covert exchange not everyone notices. A close-up shows hands gripping the white cloth, concealing its contents. Enkrid's eyes widen in surprise as he finally notices something crucial, realizing the true nature of the exchange. Leona now holds a dagger, wrapped in the white cloth, revealed for all to see. Close-up of her face shows a serious, unyielding expression, confirming her true intent. The man with wavy hair looks concerned and calls out to his boss. Enkrid and his team watch Leona with the dagger, our corporal wondering why Jaxon is so motivated and what exactly that dagger is. Soldier gestures angrily, holding up the cloth-wrapped blade, its significance clearly stirring strong reactions. Jaxon and Enkrid look at a woman who asks Jaxon if the stiletto is really that amazing, to which Jaxon, quite surprised, asks how Enkrid doesn't know about it. Jaxon listens intently with a neutral expression, showing his typical calm demeanor, a close-up on his serious face emphasizing the weight of the discussion. A man with gray hair gestures as he speaks, adding to the gravity of the situation, and Enkrid is told not to worry about the stiletto, implying its power is beyond his current concern. Our persistent corporal looks over his shoulder, expecting to hear from someone soon about their next steps. A nearby soldier reacts with shock, exclaiming how insane the unfolding situation is, while Enkrid calmly listens to his squadmates' chatter, processing information. The man with long dark hair listens intently, his expression thoughtful, and then walks forward with purpose, Enkrid falling in behind him, ready for action. Three men gather in a room, deep in conversation, strategizing their next move, with two of them discussing the critical need to use this specific moment to their advantage. Allied, now behind bars, clearly admits that he promised rewards to those who would place him as successor. Elsewhere, Enkrid is climbing a surface in the dark, pushing his physical limits even in secret, with a tightly tied rope bundle symbolizing the tools of his arduous training. Enkrid and his squadmates regroup in the field, likely after a mission, showing their cohesion. Our training fiend looks downward, tired, sweating, and pensive, reflecting on his progress. He carries weighted stones, knowing that things others can learn in a week take him a month, no, a year of brutal practice. He grips the rope of a weighted stone with a determined look, knowing he can't waste any time, and more importantly, he doesn't want to. Our training fiend continues his grueling training with weighted stones, resolved to use each day and create a better foundation for his future. From a distance, two soldiers observe Enkrid's relentless training, clearly impressed. Close-up of a soldier's bearded jawline shows his focused attention, acknowledging Enkrid's dedication. Another soldier in a cape watches as Enkrid finishes his intense workout, nodding in approval. A veteran soldier smiles, recognizing a kindred spirit in Enkrid's unwavering drive. Enkrid looks toward the camera, sweating profusely after his training, a testament to his efforts. He nods with a slight, determined smile, signaling his readiness for more. Suddenly, a veteran soldier swings a training staff at Enkrid, initiating another sparring session. The veteran parries Enkrid's attack during their training duel, showing his superior skill, and a group of soldiers watching react to Enkrid's performance, yelling that he fell on his ass 4 times already. The veteran soldier yells at Enkrid during their repeated sparring, asking if he isn't tired yet, calling him a damn fiend after going at it 11 times. Other soldiers standing nearby offer to take over the sparring session, eager to test their own mettle against the corporal. More soldiers watch and comment on the intense training, shouting encouragement to take him down, marveling at his insane dodges, and exclaiming at his moves, wondering what barbarians are doing so late at night. The veteran soldier executes another perfect takedown move on Enkrid, sending him sprawling. Our training fiend lands hard on the ground after being thrown, but still maintains his composure. The veteran soldier watches Enkrid with a serious expression, respecting his persistence. Enkrid gets right back up to face the soldier, looking exhausted but utterly determined, even being called insane by his opponent. Our determined swordsman looks up with a determined, slightly mischievous smirk during his training session, thinking it's like a little kid who found something new to play with. Close-up of a training partner who has one eye covered, watches Enkrid with a serious expression, acknowledging his open hostility and uniqueness despite knowing Enkrid is far stronger than him. A man with wavy hair and a cloak watches the training session unfold nearby, observing the fierce exchange, as the training partner throws Enkrid to the ground with another powerful move, yelling that he got him again and to do better. Close-up of the man with wavy hair shows him observing the session, thinking Enkrid falls for the same thing at least 3-4 times, concluding he's really not talented at fighting at all. Enkrid attempts to land a strike, but the training partner deflects it with ease, showing the skill gap. The training partner executes another powerful throw, tossing our corporal over his shoulder, to which Enkrid lets out a surprised sound. But Enkrid recovers quickly, immediately lashing out with a punch during the training, refusing to stay down. Soldiers in the background cheer enthusiastically, watching the intense training, enjoying the show. Nearby, an elven woman and a younger character are conversing, asking if they are really dating, to which the other replies no, and then asks if it's a joke, only to hear married. Our determined swordsman looks sweat-streaked and exhausted, contemplating the bizarre conversation he just overheard about not having a ceremony but having a child, thinking it's bothering him and wishing she'd just head inside. The man with wavy hair stands in the center of the training group, observing Enkrid with a thoughtful gaze. Close-up of Enkrid's face shows him staring intently forward, oblivious to the man's scrutiny. The close-up of the man with wavy hair shows him looking stoic, his thoughts hidden. Soldier stares at the man with wavy hair, looking confused by his presence or his quiet intensity. The man with wavy hair speaks, addressing Enkrid by name, noting that his talent is by no means worth speaking of. He looks down in contemplation, admitting he still has this inexplicable desire to teach Enkrid and can't hold himself back any longer. He then directly addresses Enkrid, telling him he's in a different boat from them and suggesting he just sit and watch. Our determined swordsman looks over his shoulder with a sharp gaze, sensing the shift in dynamics. Close-up of the man with wavy hair shows him looking serious, his offer genuine. Another close-up of Enkrid shows him looking stoic and focused with an intense expression, considering his options. Enkrid eventually sits alone on a roof, looking down at 2 soldiers standing below, pondering the situation. He looks downward, observing a soldier training with a wooden staff below, noting that even if what he's holding is just a wooden stick, the man is still dangerous. Our corporal grips his sword hilt, resolving to be prepared for anything, knowing constant vigilance is key to survival. Our stubborn corporal once again confronts a skilled opponent in a shadowy night camp, feeling the familiar tension of war permeate his body. And though he clearly sees the incoming attack and it's faint, the glowing sword still finds his neck, ending him in a fatal blow. But in an instant, our resurrecting swordsman is back, locking wooden swords with the very same opponent, watched by concerned fellow soldiers, and he's shocked by how much faster his training partner is, even after all his relentless practice. He still feels he hasn't gotten stronger, standing beneath a massive cliff that feels like the intimidating height of his own skill gap. Yet a small, determined smile creeps onto his lips, and our grimy trainer grips his wooden sword tightly, ready for more. Even as two other soldiers collapse from exhaustion, Enkrid demands, "One more," only to be quickly overwhelmed and left coughing on the ground, making the seasoned warrior watching him wonder why he simply won't give up, especially since at this rate, he'll never overcome this wall. Though the veteran signals it's time to stop for the night, our determined corporal stands tall, drenched in sweat, his fierce gaze unyielding as if ready to fight until dawn. The seasoned warrior smiles, clearly impressed by Enkrid's unyielding spirit. Later, bruised and battered, our persistent swordsman kneels before a senior officer, taking a moment to thank the noble woman standing on the stairs. He then turns to a companion and asks if they weren't hoping that ugly idiot Polide was behind this whole mess, while the noble woman thoughtfully considers the implications. Walking outside, our corporal listens as his red-haired companion whispers that Polide definitely hired the Gilfin Guild, and from her carriage, the noble woman explains how they already knew all about it and even tried to pay the military to release the mercenaries. She then muses if Polide's actions were out of loyalty to the previous leader, but quickly dismisses the thought, assuming our pragmatic swordsman isn't interested in such lofty ideals. As they approach the fortress gate, lined with armored soldiers, our respectful soldier asks the noble woman if she'll be safe without their protection outside the border, watching her with a soft, concerned expression. The carriage halts and Enkrid helps the noble woman step down, extending his hand, which she takes with a graceful smile. Meanwhile, inside the carriage, two men lament their failed mission, but one claims they got something useful from it, the existence of a peculiar soldier. A long-haired veteran tells our grimy trainer to lower his sword, admitting he admires the effort but plainly stating Enkrid has no talent, a familiar criticism our persistent swordsman has heard countless times, but has never once listened to, managing to get this far anyway. Our resolute leader bursts into Rem's room, startling him awake and demanding to train, quickly sparring with him to teach efficient decision-making and the explosive movements that flow through the body. Our no-talent champion strikes Rem, leaving a shallow cut on his neck, and realizes with surprise that he's actually faster than his axe-wielding comrade. Rem, both surprised and excited by our leader's newfound speed, then praises the fluid flexibility and strengthened muscles Enkrid has developed, only to unleash a powerful axe swing of his own, forcing our struggling swordsman to deflect it, just barely holding his ground. Our diligent swordsman realizes Rem's axe is now even quicker, reflecting their brutal cycle of shared improvement. Later, as Enkrid practices his swings alone, an ally tells him he no longer needs to train those specific moves, leaving our swordsman questioning why they'd come all this way just to tell him that. Suddenly, a sharp weapon strikes our eternally falling swordsman's throat, and he clutches it, gasping as he collapses, dying and triggering yet another reset. Enkrid listens intently as Ragna explains that predicting an attack isn't just about sight and hearing, but also your sense of direction and movement, like a predator hunting its prey, an instinct gained by repeatedly fighting with all senses on high alert. Watching our relentless trainer, Ragna wonders when Enkrid will finally realize he's the most insane one among them all, a thought Audin and Rem clearly share, with Rem commenting on Enkrid's extreme training. Meanwhile, the panther form Esther watches our exhausted corporal sleeping, observing that he trains enough to die every single day, and only survives because of her magic, threatening that if this man does end up dying, she won't ever break her curse. Gathered around a small table, his squadmates, including Rem, Audin, and Ragna, push our overwhelmed leader for more real experience, making him feel like they want him to test himself, even though he knows he's not improving at all.